ICQPodcast episode 334, SDRPlay Announcements and the Senhaix 8600 review. Well, hello and welcome fellow Amateur Ham Radio enthusiasts to this, our 334th episode of the ICQ Amateur Ham Radio podcast. Supported this episode by William Woodward, Whiskey 7 Delta Oscar Charlie, along with our monthly and subscription donors. In this episode, Martin M1MRB is joined by Chris Mike 0 Tango Charlie Hotel, Martin Mike 0 Sierra Golf Lima, Ed DD5 Lima Papa, Frank Kilo 4 Foxtrot Mike Hotel, and Bill Whiskey Charlie 3 Bravo to discuss latest Amateur Ham Radio news. Myself, Colin M6BOY, rounds up the news in brief. And this episode's feature is actually a double feature for you this episode. It's announcements from SDRPlay in relation to new hardware and software, and also a review of the Senhaix 8600 handheld, which Chris Howard Mike Tango Charlie Hotel reviewed for us. Now, as always, it's your very kind donations that keep this show advert-free and helps us pay our bills in our way. And this episode, we'd like to thank William Whiskey 7 Delta Oscar Charlie and said thanks for an informative and entertaining programme. So you're more than welcome. William's donations, along with our monthly and subscription donors, as I say, pay our ways. And you can show your value you find in the show by helping us out. All you have to do is visit www.ICQPodcast.com/donate, where say whatever you find value in our show, pop along our way and say it helps keep this show advert free for everybody. Right, now we're going to head over to our news roundtable in this episode. So we're going to join Martin, Chris, Martin, Ed, Frank and Bill to discuss and generate thoughts about the latest ham radio news, including plants grow faster on 40 metres and ham satellite QSOs. As always, guys, hope you enjoy.
Nah, I don't like either. But I do like operating my ham radio rig outdoors. But on contest days, well, the superstations always seem to win. So here's the deal. The steering committee has taken a bulldozer to level the playing field between the big guns and the little pistols in the Fox Mike Hotel Portable Ops Challenge, October 3rd and 4th, 2020. See foxmikehotel.com and click the POC tab. Will you take the challenge?
Well, hi guys. Welcome to episode 334 of the ICQ News podcast. And tonight, our round table, we have with us Mr. Chris Howard M0TCH. Hi, Chris.
Hi, Martin. Hi, guys.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like a month ago, but we were out playing earlier, as you'll obviously tell us later.
Yeah.
Mr. Rothwell is also here to try and get me into trouble. M0SGL. Hi, mine.
Hello. It's not really a round table, is it? Because even my, we're all over the world, and even my table here is kind of more triangular than round. But I get the concept. Hello.
You're on a spiky table because you're coming in on a star network.
Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Moving over to Germany, we have Mr. Ed Durrant DD5LP. Hi, Ed.
Hi, my table's square.
Is it? Oh, right.
Yep.
Well, I'm not going to call it a square pointy table. It's a round table. It's a concept. Okay, I'm going to jump across the pond now. Mr. Frank Howell, K4FMH. Hi, Frank.
Hey, and circle gets the square. This is Frank K4FMH here for the round table that can be square. Good to be here.
Yeah. And Bill, Mr. Bill Barnes, WC3B, will hopefully join us as we go through. At the moment, Bill's been called away to a meeting at work, so unfortunately can't join us. But hopefully Bill will be with us soon. Right, let's start the first news story. Our first news story, 2 VU hams make 6 satellite contacts in a single day. Now, that's not 6 contacts through one satellite. That's actually contacts through 6 satellites. Do you want to go first, Ed?
Yeah, we'll do. This is from our Indian friends, Rajesh, VU2EXP, and Lucky, VU2LBW. And they're, if you read the online text on the website at ICQPodcast.com, and you'll realize from it how excited they were about this. They actually managed to work through as Martin said, 6 different satellites, 6 different FM birds through the day, and made at least one contact in every one, and one of those was also the ISS, so I presume the crossband repeater, and they're just so happy about it. Rajesh is actually the regional coordinator for the West of India zone of AMSAT India, and he got together and worked VU2LBW via all of these satellites, so they had contacts to each other, and actually 5-9 reports each way from all 6 birds. And some of them are satellites that have been up there a long time, some are newer. So I think the oldest one was 27 years ago. And it's just nice to read something where somebody's gone out and they never intended to do this, but it worked out as a lovely day on the 9th of September for them. And they'll remember it for a long time. And good on them, and well done.
Yeah, they knew how to build things years ago, didn't they, that lasted. Let's hope the current satellites will last a long time. Frank, what's your thoughts?
I'm just very tickled at it. Here's a outgrowth of what I think is a splendid work by the global AMSAT organization with chapters in different countries, and they're doing some bang-up education and focus, and getting these birds up to the extent they've had success in doing that, educating hams through different chapters. And here in India, we've got their coordinator and another ham partnering and really hitting a home run. I just give them a big round of applause. That's exciting enough to want me to go out and work some satellites. Good deal.
Yeah, it's an interesting deal, and I'm really pleased for them. Chris, I'm leaving Martin till last because I know he's got a big smile on his face anyway. What's your thoughts, Chris?
Well, I think it's pretty impressive. I'd like to work one satellite, to be honest. But I think the fact that I think we covered on a previous episode, although I don't think it was on that episode, the fact we've now got a repeater on the ISS, cross-band repeater, that might just encourage me to actually finally give it a go. So I'm hoping that's not as difficult as perhaps some of the other ways to operate satellites. FM repeaters, I believe, are probably the easiest ones to work, and Martin might tell us in a minute just how easy. But I need to get my finger out and get it done. So yes, I think for me, the ISS will be a good start, and it might give me that motivation. But good on these guys, 6 in a day. That's pretty impressive.
Certainly is. Now, I saw Martin's face when he worked 6 contacts through one satellite. If I think you'd have worked 6 satellites, Martin, we wouldn't have got you off the hilltop, would we?
No, probably not. I mean, ironically, the app that I was using, which was, I forget which one it was, told me that the pass was going to be AO91, and it transpired to be AO92. But our mate Pete from the Cam Hams sent me in the direction of the right kind of apps to use, and now I've got those tracking apps there, which is all good. In fact, I found it really easy to work the FM satellite. As soon as you hear it, you just need to make sure that you get the right Doppler shift programmed into your handheld, because you have to, as it passes overhead, you of course have to change the transmit frequency from your radio. That's easy enough, although my old ID51 handheld that I was using allows you to do an offset split of however many 100 megahertz between 77s and 2 meters. My new ID51 plus 2 doesn't let you do a split that, so you've got to program it in on 2 different levels. So it can be a pain depending on what kind of handheld you're using, but otherwise you can always use the dual side of a handheld, and it's fairly simple to do. I'll be honest with you, 6 satellites in one day. I didn't realise there were that many FM satellites. I thought there were only a few. I've got AO91, 92. There's a D-Star one on the ISS programmed in, but I didn't realise there were other ones. So I'm going to have to tune that in. Although I will say that these guys were really lucky to get a day when all 6 birds flew overhead at a reasonable height, a sort of workable height rather than just on the horizon. I'm not sure how often that happens, but when I do look on the app, I quite often get a day when I get no decent passes of any FM satellites. So they obviously picked the right day for it, and well done to them. It's a great achievement. Not everyone can do the satellites because you have to do a little bit more than just take your radio out the box and switch it on. But yeah, it's great fun. I'd highly recommend anybody.
And also, I've got a question for you. How do you do the Doppler shift? If you've got a kind of a normal handheld, got it's kind of channelized FM frequencies. How do you cope with Doppler shift?
So I program in as different channels. So at the moment, what I've got, I think it's 6 entries for like AO91, and the receive frequency is always the same. Transmit frequency, whatever the frequency is, I just type in the transmit frequency, like acquisition of satellites as it approaches, as it's overhead. So I've got like 6 different channels programmed in, just with the different offset to account for it. And as it flies overhead, because you're pointing the aerial directly up, you then need to be on the overhead one. As you start to point it in the opposite direction, you just turn it around. I think the idea is you're supposed to listen to the satellite perhaps on another radio, or using something like a radio that gives you the opportunity to listen to what you're transmitting. I think they like you to do that, so if you're getting in, but I was only using a handheld. I didn't do that. I'll probably get a slap on the wrist for that, but yeah, you just program it into the memories. That's all I did.
Cool. Thank you. Good tip.
For 2 meters, you don't need to worry about the Doppler. You do need to worry for 70 SEMS.
I think you do. At least the information that I found on AMSAT's website suggested that you do need to worry about it for 2 meters. You only need to worry about your transmit frequency, not the receive frequency. So the receive frequency, if the receive frequency is typically 2 meters, you don't need to worry about that. But I think if your transmit frequency is 2 meters, I think you do need to worry about the Doppler shift still. Don't quote me on that, but the information that I have suggested that you do still need to do it.
So you can either program in the frequencies, or if you've got a dual receive handy toolkey, you could actually, on the receive side, set the step to much tighter than 12.5 kilohertz if you can set it down to something like a kilohertz.
Easiest thing to do, just program into the memories. They're really easy to do. It takes up 6 channels, but most of our handhelds have got hundreds of channels that we never program into anyway.
Correct. So what we're saying here is absolutely great story. Really pleased. Congratulations, guys. You're certainly in the spirit of amateur radio.
And by the way, there's 18 amateur radio satellites up there operational at the moment.
There you go.
FM or inclusive of SSB?
It just says currently over 18 fully operational amateur radio satellites in orbit. It's on Wikipedia. So yeah, some of those will be like QO100, for example, is a linear transponder. So some of those are going to be linear, some are going to be FM. My guess would be 2/3 FM.
There you go. Yeah, FM easy to work by comparison to cyber, that's for sure.
Yeah, easier to work the FM satellites, but there's only one channel to work on, so you've got more people fighting for it.
Yeah, like a pile up on FM. It's quite interesting.
And what happens there is you lose all the audio because of the effect of 2 FM stations on the same frequency, whereas on sideband, even on the linear ones, you in theory you can hear both of the stations that are on exactly the same frequency at the same time. Sometimes.
I think it depends on how powerful the signal is going into it. Because when I was trying it, and again, I'm now on satellites, I've only done this once. I was hearing people, and it was almost like someone was keying over the other person to get in. So it may be that one person's got more.
That can also happen, unfortunately. Yeah.
But I was only using an arrow antenna, a 5-watt handheld.
Yeah, and 5 watts or so should be all you need.
Well, that's a good news story. Good news story. Moving on, and I like this one because it's amateur radio, but I'm not interested in plants. So one day I'll tell you my story about my theory on gardening. But it says here that plants grow faster on the 40-meter band. So there seems to be some correlation between RF on 7 megs and plants growing. I thought this was quite interesting. What are your thoughts, Frank?
There are 2 ways my response can go. One is somewhat humorous. The other is more serious. I'll take the serious approach here. The researchers at University of Sorbonne in France have experiments going where they've got small plants, seedlings, and they're sending RF across them and that sort of thing. Now, there's been work published in the ARL QST and the QEX. I don't remember which one, but on using a tree as an actual antenna. It depends on how much sap is flowing. So, there's actually been some amateur radio work on using plant material as antennae, but knowing that it seems to affect growth patterns. Now, they also say, well, this is not totally novel. Insects, birds, and other animals, including humans, have their biological receptors influenced by RF pulses, not necessarily at 7 megahertz, but nevertheless. And this is the basis of a lot of the anti-5G efforts to say, 5G in the cell phone industry is going to rot our brains and whatever else the argument happens to be. So it's an interesting story. It's one of those broad things that it opens the door to a whole lot of speculation beyond the science. But I'd encourage our listeners to read it in New Scientist magazine. Look at our show notes. And it's a very interesting story. And I just hope our California hams who may grow certain types of plants don't get any ideas, Martin.
Yeah, sounds reasonable to me, Frank. Sounds reasonable to me. And, we were on earlier talking about this. And I'm going to pass it to Martin next. And he said, oh, maybe that's why one side of my lawn grows more than the other. Hi. Over to you, Martin.
Yeah, well, I do wonder about that because initially my first thoughts on this when I read this, I was seriously, who researches this stuff in a time we are absolutely desperate for a vaccine for COVID-19? What are these guys doing? They're subjecting plants to RF at 7 megahertz. I mean, seriously, who thinks this stuff up? It is an interesting concept, though. And in my garden, there is if you look at my back garden, the left-hand side of my garden, plants grow brilliantly. Pretty much anything we plant there grows, within a few exceptions. On the right-hand side of the garden, pretty much nothing grows. Now, originally we put this down to, one gets more sun than the other, perhaps because we're on clay soil here. Perhaps that's because on the other side, maybe the previous occupiers put more topsoil and stuff in. I don't know. But on the right-hand side where nothing grows, ironically, is where my HF antenna goes across. Now, my HF antenna is not high enough for 40 meters there, but the opposite side of the garden, is that almost one wavelength or something? I don't know. Maybe I'm being skeptical and that's helping things grow on the other side. But yeah, it's an interesting concept. I don't think I'm going to leave 40 meters transmitting just to find out, though.
Well, it's interesting, and yeah, it is important. I suppose it's important research because if you sort of transmit or have 40 meters RF, 7 megs RF floating about above plants and they grow quicker and stronger, as the population grows, we probably need to be forcing plants to grow quicker to feed the population. So
does that mean that they'll come after our frequencies then? So no, we need that now.
Yeah, well, we'll be put up on satellites, mate. Chris, what's your thoughts?
Well, I saw this and I thought, is it April the 1st? What is this? Plants growing faster due to RF. Well, then I thought, well, does this give us any concerns about if it's affecting biology? And let's face it, animals and plants are all biology. Does this mean that we should be concerned about RF and effects on people and animals and that sort of thing as well? So I'm quite sceptical. I think Martin's garden, lawn growing, whatever, is more likely to be down to the soil or the sun rather than Martin's HF aerial. But no, I don't know what to think. It did seem a bit odd. I'm aware there's been lots of research in the past about RF and its impact on people and that sort of thing. And I'm quite sceptical, really. These are academics, so I'm sure this has been, not proofread, but researched and reviewed by other academics. But I don't know. It just seems to me to be how they found this out. Why they tried to prove this. What made them think about trying to prove this connection, or have they found it out some other way? But yes, it does seem to me to be a little strange. And if this turns out to actually be true, and that plant telegraph has to, when it's RF floating around, well, what other implications does that mean for radio? Does it mean that it's going to cause other biological issues or other biological phenomena be perhaps not wanted?
Yeah, well, it's like also ourselves. I mean, it brought it home to me when I did the American exam that 50 megahertz is quite dangerous to the human body. Microwaves, you can cook you. It might just be that it heats up the plants.
Well, that's what I always thought. So I always thought that RF, that's non-ionizing radiation, would have the effect of heating, which of course on the human body you would feel. And ionizing radiation, so things like X-rays and the real dangerous stuff, that's what causes things like cancer. But 40 meters clearly isn't in the ionizing part of the band or ionizing part of the spectrum. So apart from perhaps heating up, I'm not really sure what else it would do. So yeah, hence the skepticism really. And that's what we've been told is wrong,
Yeah, but I suppose if it warms up the plant, then it would probably think it's sort of later in the year and grow quicker. I don't know.
The bit that's missing from the article is actually how much power was being run. It just says that it doesn't say it was running 5 watts or 10 kilowatts, does it? So we just don't know, I suppose.
No, that's true. Ed, what's your thoughts?
Well, a couple of points. The article originally comes from the New Scientist magazine, the August 22 issue this year, which would mean that this research probably was done in 2018, 2019. So in response to Martin's question about why aren't they working on COVID, I suspect this happened 2 years ago to be at this stage to be publishing. The other thing that I remember about a year ago was a news story about 900 megahertz RF killing brain cancer. So in other words, actually dissolving cancers around the brain. So RF does affect biological receptors, and sometimes good, sometimes bad. That was 900 megahertz, so that would be 3G, 2G. So I don't know what power level they were running, about 5 watts or something. So low power. But what I hope this doesn't bring about is that farmers decide to run megawatts of 7 megahertz to improve their crops, because I get enough interference from faulty electrical fences out here in the countryside. I don't need RF pulses at 7 megs as well. Thank you very much.
I know what you mean, and I suffer. I work with the railway. I'm a contractor for the railway at the moment, and one of the stations that I visit very, very frequently, you cannot use 40 meters there at any time of the day or night. I assume it's the broadband coming in over the phone line to the station, but the whole band is S9 all the way up, and unless the station's above S9, you can't hear them, and even then it's horrible whistle. So but interestingly, the plants grow good around there. Anyway,
so I have just found the new soil, the bits of it you can read without having to pay. On the website, you just talk about it was to do with press seedlings that they were growing, and weak pulses of RF energy at 7 megahertz. So a little bit more detail there. You just said that it's a frequency normally to amateur radio operators.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Moving on, this is kind of a correction. The last podcast, we talked about Brazil looking at potentially doing away with exams for amateur radio, and Dan and I were probably the most vocal of the two. Leslie put his tin hat on and hid under the table. But it looks like they've backed down, which is quite nice. Now, I'm going to give this to Frank first. Frank, do you want to go first?
Sure. Well, having been involved with federal government as an employee, although I didn't make policy, I've been around it. I can tell you organizations come out with things that some of it spun off into areas that is not the main focus. Okay. So I'm not terribly surprised that this can happen with a regulator. Amateur radio is not the top priority of Anatel in Brazil. So I consider it one of these oops things that they did something that probably solved a lot of internal bureaucratic issues, and in the light of day and the feedback that followed and explanations ad nauseum, and I'm sure happened, they changed their mind. On rare occasion, the FCC has done likewise in the sense that they've withdrawn some things. At least here we do have an opportunity to comment. So I look at it as that. I think it was probably a good strategy. But corporate communication, whether it's for government, I mean corporate in the generic sense, not corporate versus government, but corporate communications are incredibly important. And here's a real good example of it and how they had or decided to backtrack. So that's my take on it, Martin.
I think they threw the hand grenade in the room, Frank, and see what happens.
Well, and that happens too.
Yeah. So, it's a good one. Chris, what's your thoughts?
Well, I think, listen to feedback and they've made the right choice. So that's pretty much all I've got to say. I think Frank's covered it.
Yeah, because I think it is important us having a license, but I think it does set us apart. And I know I don't want to be elitist or anything like that, but I see when people pass their amateur radio exams, they have a smile from ear to ear. They have a sense of achievement. If you give them away free, then you lose a big part of the enjoyment of the hobby, I would suggest.
Yeah, so I think you're right. I remember a chap did a talk 3 years ago at the club from the Falkland Islands, and he talked about over there, you just had to apply for it and you got it from the post office, and that was it. There was no exam or anything else. And yeah, I'm with you on that one. I think I suppose you get that sense of achievement, and it's something that you value. If you have to work for something, you value it. So yeah, I think it's just a case of you giving it, you don't value it. So actually, I think in that regard, I think it is a good idea to return some sort of exams to get your license.
Yeah, spot on the money, mate. Spot on the money. Martin, what's your thoughts?
Well, yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right about the sense of achievement. And it does add, and it also adds a spark. If you've had to go and work for something, is that little bit spark? It's a little bit more of, I had to go and work for this. Now, what can I get to play with? But yeah, you're right. Yeah, you should. I mean, I do think you should have to take a test. There's some things that you just need to know before you operate the kit. Okay, yeah, you can. In the days gone by, you could send £15 to the post office, get yourself a CB license, and you can run 4 watts at 20 seconds. Great. And assuming you follow your rules and your licenses and everything like that, you don't really have much to worry about, because in theory, you can't cause interference to anybody, and you can't really do yourself much mischief with 4 watts at 27 meg. When you're talking about higher powers, maybe only 10 watts. I don't know what the regulations are in Brazil, but when you're talking about UHF, VHF, perhaps microwave frequencies, there is more that can go wrong. So I think it's only fair that you should have to take a test and prove that you are not just someone off the street that just wants to play with something that might not know what he's doing. By taking the test, you're sort of going that extra mile, working a bit harder for it. So you're more likely to know what you're doing and not cause mischief to yourself or to anyone else, I think. But the fact that they've listened to the feedback, I think is a good thing.
Yeah, I think we're probably edging on the right thing. Let's say Dan and I don't think we totally agreed last time. But Ed, what's your thoughts?
Okay, well, a bit of background on this was that in Brazil, the CB license or the public service license or whatever title you want to give it is one that does not require a exam to be taken. And the suggestion from Anatel, or the proposal from Anatel, was to apply the same to the very basic entry-level amateur radio license. Because on the basis that it's commercial only equipment and it's low power and da. But then in the reply, and this is translated, unfortunately, not very well translated. If you read the text, it says, Anatel clarifies, in short, that the section where the extinction of the evidence is mentioned in this grant's making was just an abstract example, not constituting in no time, trend, or choice of what Anatel will do. Look. What the look's supposed to mean, I don't know, but never mind. What they're basically saying, I think, if I interpret that bad translation correctly, was, yeah, as I think Martin said, they wanted to throw the hand grenade in the room and see what happens. They wanted to motivate some discussion. That's how I interpret what they've now replied, which is where they were saying this was only a proposal. It doesn't say we were going to do it. And they got the response back they wanted, which was that somebody actually replied to their proposal with reasons why they shouldn't do it and what they should do. So, in some ways, they motivated a response. I presume that means that normally they get no response or limited responses. So, the end result is they're basically saying, we never really intended doing that, but we got you to talk about it.
They certainly did, Ed. They certainly did. They've come to their senses. Okay, moving on. Now, it says here, international radio stations now restricted on TuneIn. Now, I worry about this because, in fairness, TuneIn is an internet radio provider, and a lot of shortwave stations have gone off the air and gone to the internet. If these shortwave stations are now being blocked by country licensing, we're on a double-edged sword. Not only have we lost them off the shortwave bands, we've also lost them from the internet, potentially, unless somebody comes up with another dodgy VPN. What's your thoughts, mine?
Well, I was going to say VPN. Well, yeah, I mean, this is a UK story, and I'll be honest and say it's convenient that it's happened at the same time that the majority of local commercial stations were purchased, closed, and networked from London to build a national brand. Now, that in itself is controversy to me, as that's pretty much as good as our regulator admitting that DAB has failed. As if it was fit for purpose, that station that's recently appeared would have just gone straight to DAB and not bothered with analog. The fact they purchased stations at goodness knows what cost speaking to me about DAB's purpose going forward. I mean, we know the future of radio is IP delivery, but of course, if things are disappearing from IP or you're being restricted by country, that's not a good thing. Now, I get that some radio stations, so I can go to my Amazon Echo and I can say, hey, play this radio station, and sometimes she will just play it. Other times she will say to me, due to licensing laws, this is not available in your country. And I think a lot of that is down to the music that is being played, because when you broadcast on air, you're playing music, you have to pay performing rights licenses, and obviously it depends on which country you're in, how much they cost, how many countries you stream to. The more listeners you get, the more countries you cover, the higher those costs are going to be. And I sort of get that. I get why they want to restrict it. Speech-based radio, I presume they've restricted speech-based radio too, but it makes absolutely no sense to me at all to do that. I mean, why would you want to restrict speech-based radio? Surely you want your messages to get out to, in theory, as many people as possible, and as many people as possible to be able to hear your adverts, which in reality on TuneIn could be targeted adverts, either for your country or even perhaps your own kind of searches and things like that. I don't know, but I'll be interested to see where it goes. Same
here, because I was concerned that if we lose shortwave stations and we get blocked, it could be a problem.
We could put a big shortwave transmitter in your garden. That'd be all right, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Get up.
Neighbours would love the mast.
Yeah. Sort your garden out as well, wouldn't it? Make your plants grow.
Yeah. Behave. Chris, go for it.
Well, I suppose the question was also, does this also affect podcasts? I know TuneIn also, I believe, carry podcasts, and is it going to affect, for example, well, obviously we're in the UK, so people can hear us. I think the restriction is that it's carrying content from other countries to the UK, and it's obviously a copyright type thing. But yeah, I mean, I don't think it's good news. It's limiting what people can access. Like you say, we're taking away access from the shortwave bands because they're shutting stations down, and now they're limiting access by the internet. So I think it's a bad news story, really.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, there's ways around it, but we shouldn't have to be doing internet naughties to get this sort of thing. Ed, your thoughts?
Yeah, just following on from what you said, this specifically is a wall to stop UK listeners from being able to listen to internet radio stations from outside of the UK. Somewhat similar to the China internet wall. So, for example, an internet radio station in the US, I could listen to from here in Germany without a problem, but you can't in the UK. So it's a very specific thing they've done due to a High Court decision in the UK. If we get a lot more of this happening, it will become a problem. At the moment, I would just say, dump TuneIn and go to somewhere else. But then, of course, if you have another one, they may have the same High Court battle ruling on them. So, it's difficult.
Can I just ask a daft question? Do you think this is a desperate drive by perhaps Ofcom or whoever to try and push people into buying a DAB radio? Because we know the take-up on DAB has been very little since its launch in the late 90s. Do you think it's a desperate drive? Like, you can't listen to this. Listen to our stations. Listen to DAB.
But that doesn't give me the source, though, does it? I can't listen to a US station on DAB.
If you can't get other stations, have a look at the choice that we've got here on DAB. Please make us look better than we are.
I don't think so, no. I think it's specific to Sony and Warner, who have sued TuneIn in the British High Courts. But, I know where you're coming from, Martin, and that could be happening as well. But it's if this gets used, my worry is if this gets used as an example case for other people than TuneIn, then it could spread that you effectively have a podcast and internet radio station block on stations from outside of the internet stations from outside of the UK being heard in the UK. And that's censorship.
Mm. Interestingly enough, I've just asked my Echo to play a well-known station from New York, and it's just played it quite happily, no problem at all. Although I don't think that's on TuneIn. I think that's just on whatever.
That's gone through Amazon or whatever, yeah.
Yeah, my concern is that we are potentially about to go into walled gardens, and I know at the moment there are some podcast providers and radio station providers that aren't, but there are some that are now creating their own little walled garden, and if you ain't in it, or they want to put a restriction on where it goes, you're going to get snookered. But Frank, sorry, left you out in the cold a bit. What's your thoughts on this one? Are we going to have this problem in the States?
We already have. But I want to cast this or recast this specific story in a much larger context. This is all about the drama of assigning value in a very rational way. And by that, content, if it's popular, if it has an audience who seeks to consume that content, it's largely financed on the basis of advertising and similar revenue streams. So part of this is two giants of content. And I hesitate to use the word ownership, because ownership tends to lose its meaning in the world of digital content creation. We could spend the rest of the podcast kind of going through, some of those things. But nevertheless, they own the rights to it. And Sony and Warner are big players in this. And as their attorneys look at the value for that content, they're continuing to look at it very rationally, not in a way that we would like as consumers, but very rationally for the best interest of their clients. And let me give you an example of how this can turn on a dime. I have a real good friend here in the Jackson area who is a ham and a practicing attorney. He practices mainly in real estate law, and he does a lot of tower work. And there was a local church who had has a tower, a cell phone tower, in their property behind their church, and it's made them a fair amount of money. Well, the tower licensee, a cell company, said, we're going to end our contract with you. We thank you, and we'll say goodbye. So the church said, we want to then market this tower for licensing or leases to other cell towers. So my friend was contacted by them and said, look, can you look at this and tell us what the value is? Because we've made this amount of money, and they're just walking away. Well, the reality is while that's on a high spot and it therefore gets a good line of sight, it was a tower that was 20 years old. The way it was built was very different than the way cell companies like their towers all the same. iHeartMedia, for example, when they bought a lot of towers, they don't like round towers. Why? They've got all their buckles and all their engineering done for a certain type of triangular tower. They don't like round ones. Well, same thing for cell companies. And so this was an older style tower. The towers that were being used certainly here and companies that hold towers here for cell companies are much taller. So even though that was a good tower 20 years ago, it's not so good today. Well, the church thought, well, people are trying to rip us off. That's had a lot of value in the past, but no longer for the reasons I just stated. Now, the portfolio that Sony and Warner has, their lawyers are arguing they have a certain value. And so this is a battle over who gets to have that value. DirecTV and Dish in the U.S., you constantly have local channels, them trying to squeeze local channels. You want to get on Dish and get a bigger audience, charge more for your adverts, then you pay us more because we're the aggregator and we're going to get them to you. And I see it as, I think the Chinese say that when elephants wrestle, only the grass is what gets damaged and that sort of thing. So I look at it in a broader picture. You bet we have it here in the state.
Right. Well, as I say, it's a worrying time, I think. But we need to keep an eye on this going forward. And that's, from an ICQ podcast point of view, that's a very good reason why people should sign up for the newsletter, and so they know they can download it direct from us and not some walled garden. But there you go. That's me having my little two-penneth. Next news story, the Air Force Research Laboratory tracks sporadic E. Now, I kind of like this because us amateurs have dealt with sporadic E a fair amount. And certainly during the summer periods, we get all excited when 2 meters goes a lot further than it would normally do. But Kirtland Air Force Base have been doing some work on this, Frank, haven't they?
They have. And in our rehearsal review, we talked a bit about this and what the Air Force Research Laboratory in New Mexico at Kirtland AFB, they're just simply a little specialized group there. And they're looking at sporadic E in the upper atmosphere where large structures of dense plasma form. Now, we take tests on some of this kind of stuff, and we here on the podcast talk about, sporadic E and other propagation phenomena that happen with regard to the ionosphere. Well, we've also covered and mentioned how the Air Force in the U.S. is remodeling their high-frequency communication system, and our friends at Flex Radio Systems, the famous SDR company, kind of pioneered the way. Gerald Youngblood wrote 4 papers, I believe, in QEX and invented a company on commercializing software-defined radio. He's part of a very, very large contract to use the Flex SDR technology to build SDR systems for the Air Force. Well, those systems won't work well when sporadic E might take out certain comms from point A to point B. So this is part of the R&D program that research physicists there are looking at them, looking at what happens when these disruptions occur. Is there anything that can be done? You remember back in World War II, I believe the Brits pioneered doing one thing with regard to radar, and that was dropping tinfoil to make the signals actually do sporadic responses to radar there and things like that. So there's a lot of good stuff that may come out of this, Martin, and I'm glad that they're doing this work. We may never know some of the results, but certainly we'll know some of the results that they find.
Yeah, I agree. And the good thing is, we as amateurs do a lot of research. Don't necessarily always get the credibility for it, but if somebody's doing some serious research, this is going to ripple down to us to give us a better knowledge of what's going on. Would you agree with that, Ed?
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And if out of this we can actually map where the sporadic E clouds are, we'll have to rename it. Can't be sporadic anymore, can it? It would be sort of wandering E or something, we'd have to call it. Because once you know where these reflectors in the sky are, you can plan your communications, which is exactly what the military need to know. And it's also, if we had access to the same information, it would be very nice for us to know as well. In the article here, it says sporadic E on 6 meters and 2 meters. I don't think we get sporadic E very often on 2 meters. I think it's a typo. It should say 10 meters. It's usually 10 and 6 that we take advantage of sporadic E on. And yeah, at certain times of year, and also 4 meters is actually interesting on sporadic E. So yeah, great if this all doesn't disappear under a Secrecy Act or something and we don't get the information, but if they're open with it, this is actually very good news.
Yeah, well, I thought sporadic E also went to 2, but that's another discussion.
Yeah, I think it does, but it's more common on 10 and 6.
Well, I've just noticed Mr. Bill Barnes has come online. So, Bill, have you had any chance to spot this news story before I throw it to you?
Yes, actually.
Well, over to you then, Bill.
Yeah, I don't want to yell at Ed, but my only experience with sporadic E has been 2 on 2 meters. So I think it's geographically based. Specifically, I ran into it back, when I did 2 meters all the time. That's when I would run into it. And yes, I ran into it on 6. In fact, that's a lot of times that's how I swear I get my West Coast openings on 6. So it's there, and with everyone else said this already, and it's absolutely true. Any research, as long as it's able to be shared, is dramatically welcome, especially on this stuff. But they should really be interviewing Ed M0MNG, who's trying to do the sporadic E and the tropo stuff with handy talkies on top of hilltops I saw on Facebook earlier. So other than that, they should loop him in too, please. And that's the only other comment I have.
Yeah, Edmund spends a lot of time with handy talkies and does very well at it. So quite pleased about that. Martin, what's your thoughts?
Edmund has been on the top of hilltops recently with like a fully legal PMR 446 handheld, and he's talking to people, miles and miles away. It's amazing what you can do. But hats off to you, Edmund. But I have to wonder with this: is there a website already that shows pretty much live sporadic? I don't know how it works, but I'm sure I see people sharing graphics of this and say, "Hey, conditions are open to wherever." It's just like a Google map or something like that with color graphics over it to show where your signals might be going. I thought that already existed, but I don't know. Maybe I'm thinking of something else. Either way, that's pretty much everyone else is saying it's an interesting thing that they're working on. Great idea. I'd love to see more about it, really, and hopefully the information that they're pulling can be shared amongst us that want to know more.
I think the good thing about it will be is if they can tell us more likely where we're going to find this rather than it's happening now. If they can say I don't know, if you can work out the conditions and say there is an 80% chance of this happening in this area at 1300 UTC or something, that will be a real bonus. At the moment, we find it and then we publish it, I think, Martin. So that's where I think we go on that one. Yeah. Chris, what's your thoughts?
Well, I think a lot of the time things happen where research happens for other reasons that benefits others. So in the case, for example, think of the space rate, lots of things came out of that, trying to get to the moon and things like Velcro and Teflon and all kinds of technology came out of that that development. And of course, this is the Air Force that are doing work to help them. But of course, we may benefit as well. So they're doing this research, and it could help lots of different people, not just the Air Force. So let's see what comes out of it, and let's see what how that can help the amateur radio world.
Yes, certainly. So I think it's going to be interesting times, and I think we'll find out a lot more now we've got money being thrown at the problem. Although amateurs have done a very good job over years, if we're now getting some full-time people doing this research, hopefully we'll find out a lot more. Moving on to our last news story, and I'm really kind of worried about this. Internet and old TV caused the village's ADSL to broadband outages for 18 months. Now, I know it's down in Wales, it's probably not a very big village, but 18 months no internet because of something causing interference, and then you find it's an old TV. Now, all right, the line time base, if it's a valve 1, will be 15625 kilohertz. Well, that won't affect broadband, I'm sure. The colour burst oscillator, if I remember right, is at 4.43 megahertz, so that won't really cause a lot of problems because it's so weak. And as Ed pointed out to me earlier, it had to be some form of arcing. But how can you have a television arcing for 18 months and nobody know what it is? I really find this strange. Martin, do you want to go first?
Yeah, I mean, I read this and I think I've seen this, because everyone is sharing this on Facebook at the moment, and it immediately reminded me of the story. I think it was Australia where some guy's fridge was knocking out. I think it's probably Telstra's mobile phone signal, but I think they got it. They found that pretty quickly. But it does say a lot about the network infrastructure in this town, doesn't it? The fact that a TV can do this. But I do have to wonder, what the hell are OpenReach doing? For those outside the UK that are wondering who are OpenReach are the company that effectively, whoever you buy your broadband from, with a couple of exceptions, they connect your cables to whoever your provider is, because it's all uses the old BT infrastructure. But they're the guys that have been out and investigating this. It took them 18 months to pull out a spectrum analyzer and have a look and see what's going on. The only thing that I can say based on this, the fact that they've eventually done this, they found it to be someone's television. The guy has agreed that he won't use the television. He was mortified, and he's agreed that he won't use the television anymore. I take it based on this will open the door for Ofcom to investigate interference being caused to amateur radio operators by VDSL and power line extenders. I somehow think they're going to go very quiet on that somehow.
I think you're probably right. I still find it strange, 18 months for an arcing television.
When you switch your TV off, CRTs, you get like a decals, and you know that happens. But
it's at 25,000 volts on the top cap of a colour TV, or it always used to be when I fixed them.
Chicken feed. Peanuts power.
Yeah. But I have seen arcing and tracking across, but it's not that common. But so if you sit in the room, you'd hear it. You wouldn't leave it. You'd probably be quite worried. That's what surprised me. Chris, what's your thoughts?
Well, I'm so surprised that RF can actually get into a wired internet, service. Something that's coming on a wire. The internet's not, unless using, obviously we know Wi-Fi, but this is not affecting Wi-Fi. This is affecting the service going to someone's house. And I'm surprised that is not immune to, or certainly has a level of, should have a level of immunity to be able to not be concerned by this sort of interference. So I'm sort of surprised that the service is actually that fragile to be impacted by something as simple as a TV set, putting out a bit of RF, putting out a bit of, obviously it shouldn't be doing that, but at the same time, we should be building our infrastructure to be resilient to this sort of interference. So I'm kind of surprised, like you say, also it took so long for with some now OpenReach to actually get some kit out there to track down where the source of the issue was.
True. Ed, your thoughts on this one?
Well, if a TV can have perhaps a spark when he turns it on at 7 a.m. in the morning and takes out the ADSL, what happens if you get a motorbike with sparking, with a bad ignition system on it, which used to be the thing we used to always hate as they came down the road and wiped out most of 2 meters. Yeah, it just says to me that the complete infrastructure in this village, this ADSL infrastructure in the village, is a mess. In fact, at one point here, they say they did some recabling and it didn't solve it. Well, maybe they should have recabled with fibre and do the job properly, because then you need that in the future for the higher speed anyway. And at the same time, you take care of the interference. So goodness knows what the engineers were doing, or the accountants stood behind them, which is often the case, unfortunately. But yeah, it just shocks me that the standard of the network that they're supporting there is so bad.
But surely you'd fix the problem. All right, running new cables in it is belts and braces. I haven't got a clue what I'm doing, so I'll run it in.
Which is what they did.
Yeah, well, that's the belts and braces, because they didn't know what they're doing. But surely you go find the interference. And if it took them 18 months to find the interference, then the big thing about it, they used a spectrum analyzer.
Yeah, they used the one spectrum analyzer that OpenReach has, and they had to wait 18 months to get it.
Oh, come on.
Because somebody in Scotland was using it.
Oh, come on. They've got to have more than one. Yeah.
Get
dear. I hear where you're coming from.
Yeah.
Frank, I know it's a UK story, but have you a say on this one? This is ludicrous, I think.
Well, it is a UK story, but then it's also a universal story. I chuckled a moment ago, not in jest of Ed's comments, but I don't think people caught his subtle joke. He was shocked by this story. So this pulse emission that's come on. Think about the problems hams have, particularly when we have attic antennas and things like that. We tend to have RF that gets into our cable. Well, I don't know what frequency that the ADSL broadband operated on, and pulse can be wideband, of course, and so it obviously overlapped. And as Martin, your past experience in repairing TVs and doing things like that, so there's strange things can happen when you get lots of current or high voltage there. So it is one of those odd stories, but impulses can do some strange things. And I used to have several computers in my office, and back in the days when the university IT group had everybody on what we would call DHCP. Bill Barnes lives, eats, and breathes that, I'm sure, in his day job, where you turn your computer on, you get your own IP address, but then there's a librarian out there on a server that gives you that specific IP. I had an update of some software that would let me to connect to a big Unix server called X Windows. And that X Windows software was installed, but with a fixed IP address by the IT installer. Every morning at about 8:05, as I came in my office, I hit the button for a particular PC. It knocked off a research center next door, all of their Unix or Sun workstations that were DHCP, because that fixed IP was in their range, and the technician who installed it in my office didn't know. They cursed and cursed and cursed and cursed because they had the supercomputer on campus, so their clients were all knocked off, often in the middle of their jobs. Things like this happen in a complex world where we've got a lot of things connected. I'm sure Bill will have Bill Barnes will have some thoughts on this, but I'm not surprised. It is humorous. I would encourage us in a moment of passion to collect $50 USD from the ICQ podcast holders, buy one of these tiny tiny spectrum analyzers, and ship it over to the company there, so they'll have 2 spectrum analyzers they can perhaps use. I should say hi after that, Martin.
You mean the nano VNA, right? To answering your question, Frank, frequency used by ADSL is for upstream 26.075 kilohertz to 137.825, and downstream is 138 to 1104 kilohertz. So very, very low frequency.
That would be a very logical guess at what an impulse from a bad circuit or a circuit failure would be. But Ed, let me correct you. I have a few nano VNAs, and you can run some firmware that makes them into a spec analyzer. But there is now another device called a Tiny SA for about $50, and it's a spectrum analyzer. So that was what I was referring to. But you're correct. A nano VNA would also be a nice gift and could do some of this.
Well, as I say, I'm sure Bill's going to agree that finding an IP problem is a lot easier. Well, no, it isn't. I mean, you have to know what you're doing. But normally, if you've got two devices with the same IP address, it shows up very quickly, and normally it tells you're sharing or you've got a bad IP address, doesn't it, Bill?
Yeah, in that particular example, I would get a log entry saying that there's a duplicate IP address and give me the MAC addresses to trace it down.
And back in 1988 or 9, you may or may not have gotten that. But so that's when that was, Bill, just to get straight on it.
That's true, Frank. Well, I mean, we still support Boot P.
Yeah.
There's a blast from the past. Yeah, this is my favorite story of the day because I went through and read the article, and I'm there going, I'm having flashbacks to the 90s when I used to install ISDN lines. And I remember a particular customer that had problems with their ISDN lines that they had for very specific commercial usage, which Martin would have been familiar with back in the day. And this particular ISDN line had horrible interference, and we would put the spectrum analyzer, the network analyzer on it, and it said it had noise on it, and it was a harmonic of a FM broadcast station because it was the ISDN line to control the station. And that particular situation we fixed with a combination of filters, and actually I cut a couple inches off the cable feed and moved the modem a little bit, and that magically got us by. There's another article I ran into about this particular issue, which gives us a little more detail. So one thing I want to double check with folks, OpenReach is the new name for British Telecom. Is that true?
Kind of. It's what their internet.
It's a division of it's a division of British Telecom that deals with infrastructure.
It's the connectivity arm.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay. Now everything makes sense in my mind. Yes, they are using ADSL and VDSL2 in that particular town. And yes, they actually did go through and replace copper lines with copper lines, which blows my mind, by the way. They eventually, in this article, they found the birdie from that TV at 612 kilohertz. And you could have found it with an AM radio.
Yeah.
And generally what they find is these kind of interfering signals are generally very localized, so it might affect one or two customers, but because of the generation of this TV and the high-powered tubes in it, that it somehow transmitted and just reused the copper lines as an antenna. The one thing I will say about this article, and this is something that Ed and I were griping about, the full fiber lines will be pulled into that community here in the next 12 months. They just got behind on the fiber rollout due to the situation, pandemic situation going on. So that's from ispreview.co.uk's ISP news from yesterday. So there's a little more information, but yeah, when I first read the story without understanding that it was DSL, I was completely confused because it's like, how do you replace the lines and it didn't go away? Well, that's because they replaced it with copper instead of fiber, which is comical. At least on this side of the pond, copper is now more expensive than fiber for some reason, and no one can explain to me why I can buy single mode fiber of pretty much any length I need, and for foot for foot, copper's more expensive all of a sudden. That's very unusual and very strange. But that's all I have on this story, although I could rant for way too long.
Yeah, well, the thing with copper is that I suppose everybody's saying it's old technology, so as they ramp up the manufacturing for fibre optic, it will become cheaper. You know, volume is volume, isn't it, Bill? But I know where you're coming from. For years, we looked at fibre as being the absolute most expensive thing. But yeah, anyway, interesting story. If I was OpenReach, I would have rather hoped this one hadn't hit the news headlines, put it that way, because it doesn't put you in a very good light. Right, that concludes our news stories. And as I say, unfortunately, Bill, you won't join us for a couple, but it's great to have you anyway. Let's run through what you guys have been up to since the last time. We'll start with Chris. What have you been up to, Chris, since the last time we spoke?
Not a massive amount of radio. We did go out, Martin, you and I, the weekend, and we're helping out a couple of guys from the club that are newly licensed, or in the last year or so. And one of them had just bought a new HF radio, and he'd been playing with it for the last couple of weeks and wasn't having a lot of luck. And I think he was getting a little bit disheartened. And we got him on the air, and he managed to work a guy, I think, in Istanbul, and another guy in Scotland. So he was happy chappy when he went away that day. So I think we sort of proved his radio worked, and yeah, helped him out. So it's good. But apart from that, not really done an awful lot of this, I'm afraid.
Well, never mind. But it was a great time to spend time with Tim and the other Chris. And they're still very, very excited about amateur radio. They got their licenses just before lockdown hit, a few months before. And they're thoroughly enjoying the hobby, which is good. Martin, you've been on holiday, ain't you? Did you take radio?
I took a handy talkie with me, and I was listening, just having a listen around to see what's there. Also had the radio in the car, of course, which is quite nice to join a couple of people on 77s down on the south coast, down towards Hastings, which was quite nice. It's weird when you sort of get used to, you switch the radio on in London and you just know, you recognise all the voices. It's weird when you go somewhere else, all the different voices you hear, which was nice. So a few contacts there. But at D-Star, fairly active on D-Star over the last couple of weeks as well. And also this weekend just gone, so 1 week ago as this goes out, there was a 70 megahertz UK activity contest. Now, those that listen to this podcast regularly know that I detest contests with a passion, with the exception of the activity days where, and in particular on 4 meters and on 23 centimeters, where because the bands are so much quieter, people are just genuinely glad for a contact on those bands. So once you get the formalities of this is your signal report, and I always give correct signal reports. I don't ever say for someone's 5.9 unless they're not. Unless they are. There's always time for a quick hello, how you doing? Great to hear you, that sort of stuff, and a little bit of a chat afterwards. So I had quite a lot of fun actually on 70 megs sideband. So that was a bit of fun the other day, and actually looking at some of the locator squares that people were giving me on that, just looking them up later, and it goes a surprising way. And considering that I'm only vertical, and the majority of people I was talking to were probably all horizontal. Had I been horizontal, that would have probably gone even further, or the remote stations vertical, that would have probably got even further. But that was good fun, nevertheless. And also, as this goes out, this week just gone on Thursday, you and I, Martin, went up to the repeater site, or tomorrow as this will be, and fixed the repeater. We say this in the right order, and investigated the fault, and fixed the repeater, whatever, however you want to look at it. We went up to the repeater site, as we will do tomorrow, to repair our Fusion repeater, get that back on the air. So thanks very much to the guys at Yaesu UK for helping us out getting that fixed. So that would be good. So Fusion back on in London. Other than that, not a lot else going on, I'm afraid.
Well, it's a fair amount, and as you say, it'd be nice to get Fusion back on air. There's been a few of the locals been whinging XP's not working. Well, actually XP is working. It's our backup repeater, which is analog only. But
On
it
the
does
air,
work.
I ain't paying any money for it, so stop complaining.
That's very true. That's very true. Okay. Ed, what are you been up to?
Well, on your last comment, you do realise Microsoft stopped supporting XP a while ago. I know it's your repeater name. Yeah, well, I've been still working with Frank on the contest that isn't really a contest, or if you like, the new style of contest, the Portable Operations Challenge. And not only on the background paperwork and things, but also I've been trying to expand my capabilities. I mean, I usually go up the top of a hill with a backpack and that's it, carry everything with you. For the Portable Operations Challenge, I want to go out for 4 or 5 hours. So I've bought myself a nice tent, a 3 meter by 3 meter by 2.5 meter high thing, and a table and a chair for it and all the rest of it. And been doing that the last couple of weeks. So getting myself sorted out in that way, only to find out today that the next 10 days it's going to rain. So it's going to be a bit of a problem. And not only that, but snow's forecast next week. So, I may have to cut down on the amount of equipment I'll be taking with me to the particular location I want to go to. But, that's generally been it. Apart from that, around the radio stuff, playing with my new automatic ATU that I got from China, which works quite well. And, modifying the battery box to give me a couple more outputs and bits and pieces, but nothing so dramatic.
Well, at least you've been busy. So that's a good one. Frank, I'm sure you've been a busy bunny with all the things you do. What have you been up to?
Well, if I can only be like that Energizer bunny that's so famous in the commercials in the States, it just keeps going. I've been trying to keep up with Ed and to some degree Bill. They both serve on the steering committee, and both have been very, very busy. And Bill has been working with a team that's gotten N1MM Plus, thanks to one of their development team members, got it working with the Portable Ops Challenge. Ed's been working on a number of things. He's also been out promoting. He's appeared on some podcasts and things like that, doing some promotion for the Portable Ops Challenge. And been trying to keep up with those guys and doing the other wraparounds for that. Also trying to get the Homebrew Heroes award package as we begin to cycle out our Hero 2019. I certainly want to announce and recognize our Hero for 2019, Hans Summers, G0UPL. Hans is bringing a new generation of Homebrew Heroes into this world. In the 30th of June, he and his wife had baby Atlas Summers, all 3.7 kilograms. And that and a back injury back last Christmas has slowed Hans' development on a new QSX transceiver. But if you go to my blog at k4fmh.com, I've got some lovely pictures that Hans sent. And for his some of his birth pictures before and after the new child, his photographer said, I want you to wear white. Well, what did he have that was white? The team player he is, his official Homebrew Hero of 2019 shirt. So some of that's on my blog. Trying to get that wrapped around along with you, Martin, and with Colin. We have a new Hero 2020 that will be announced next month, sometime in October. So I've been doing a lot of that work. And also, like Ed, I've been getting my portable team together. I've been out to a site where we'll operate portably, everything portable and temporary except for AC power, out southwest of town, out where the RF is quiet. And as long as we can keep old televisions off the air, we might be okay. Modifying my 31-foot vertical, got a new set of 16 radials there at 32 feet apiece. Got a new one-to-one balun on it, so it's kind of easy. I can take this out with the fiberglass pole and put it up in all but the strongest of winds. It'll stay fine. So I've been doing a bit of that work, getting ready to do the operations challenge. Working also on a failed DR1X fusion repeater and trying to get a replacement in for that. And then I'll figure out what happened to it and get that back on the air. So doing a little bit of what you and Mr. Rothwell are doing. And frankly, I'll comment, Martin O'Pal, you sound almost back to normal after becoming a father with all the things that you have to do with early morning feedings. And you kind of, on what you've been up to, you sound a little bit like Martin of old, if you will. So Martin of older, if you will, back to you.
Yeah. Well, as to say, Martin and I will be up on that roof. on tomorrow, which is Thursday, to do that repeater, which is good news. Bill, what have you been up to since the last time?
Quite a bit, but I do want to call out Al, AB2ZY, who did that custom coding for us on N1M.
Here.
My God, he did beautiful work. We did have to do quite a bit of back and forth, and it helped because then Ed did like document revision like 75 or something and got hammered out the rules document a little bit better. So this is actually turning out to be a quite beautiful project, and I'm very anxious to enjoy it in a next weekend. We're on the sliding scale podcast time, so I gotta remember it's next weekend. As far as radio stuff, the main thing I've done, of course, is soda chasing. I did not yet get to get up on a summit at all, even though it's a good time to go, actually, because the weather just is beautiful all of a sudden. And but I did a bunch of chasing, mostly CW, because that's mostly what folks have been running. Did get to do some FT8 contacts, looking for some DX, new DX countries on different bands. Interestingly enough, just random story here. I have, over 100 confirmed stations on, 80, 40, 20, 15. Most of that's from contesting. So I'm filling in the blanks, so to say, with the DX countries on 30 and 17. And I've had some pretty nice openings on 17. So that's kind of exciting. I did get to work the Russian RTTY contest 2 or 3 weekends ago. And I had some fun with that. The vast majority of my time, believe it or not, is I'm still working on the deck project. I'm about 3/4 of the way done replacing the deck boards. Why this is significant to mention to everybody is my backup alternate plan B for the portable operations challenge will be on the deck. So I want to get that to the point where I can at least use it for that. So I'm trying to get that done. And Martin and I have talked about this multiple times about, the alternative things that you learn from being a radio amateur, specifically, replacing batteries and toothbrushes, which, by the way, I did that. Thank you for the tip on getting the battery off of Amazon for $6 or $7. And that was a hairy little process to get that thing apart, but it works great now. I actually just ordered, before we got going here, a new door switch for my dryer at home. I have a very old dryer that I do not feel like replacing, and so I went through the service manual. Yes, they still make service manuals, folks. And went through the troubleshooting thing, and step 1 it said to replace was the door switch. So I just ordered myself a door switch, and now I gotta go back through the manual and try to figure out how to get the dryer apart without destroying it and put a new switch in it when it comes in a couple days. There's a whole bunch of other stuff about around the house that I was fixing. It's been quite a month for small repairs, like the door lock. I had to replace a piece in there that broke. A couple other things for the wife. I fixed the one vacuum cleaner. It just, it's one of those times you'll find that, at least I've found, that things will work very reliably, and all of a sudden you'll go through a string of where it feels like everything's breaking. August and beginning of September was that time for me. So we're just getting through that, getting the house back in order, getting ready for the winter. So that's all I've been up to. Back to you.
All right. Well, thank you for that, Bill. Now, what have I been up to? Well, the first one is I have a surprise. I have a big surprise for all 5 of you and all of our listeners. Say hello, Mrs. B.
Good evening, everyone. Are you all keeping well and safe?
Hello,
Yes.
Mrs. B.
Hello. Martin's in trouble now because he hasn't got your cup of tea ready.
I know. I'm going to have to make it myself.
And also no chocolate biscuit. Hello.
You built the shed, Martin.
The
Hey?
fact she came in there to hunt you down means we've been on the call too long.
No. Mrs. B's been out for the evening and has just come home. And she's, I said, it might be just nice for her to say hi to yourselves and all our listeners. So that's good.
Added a touch of class, Martin.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah, needed
I'm
that.
just not worthy. Oh, dear. So what have I been up to very quickly? Well, I'll carry on working the newbies, the M7s on VHF and the repeaters as I go to and from work. There seems to be a lot of new people that just need somebody to talk to. So I'm hoping I'm doing some of that right. Mentioned HF on 40 meters at work is non-existent. Bit of a shame, really. Did have a internet problem here at home. I have a cable system, and every time I did a speed test, the speed test looked good, the ping looked good, the upload, download speeds were all good, and I would be doing something or streaming something, and it would stop, and it would whir around, and then it would go off and do it, and bits and pieces. Took me ages. Turns out I live on a fairly main road with a lot of vibration. The earth on the cable connector to the modem, the F connector, had come loose. Tightened that up, and that solved all my internet problems. So I mention it because it's standard RF problems, but you don't necessarily think of it with internet. So if anybody's got cable connections and you get some funnies, just check that your cables is done up nice and tight. Yeah, Chris mentioned we were out playing with radio at the weekend, and there was a couple of new licensees with us. I'm going to suggest something. If you've got a modern radio, you should have it backed up if you've programmed it by computer, all your frequencies. But if you've got a modern radio, effectively they're a computer with, instead of a screen and keyboard, a microphone and speaker. They occasionally go into a strange state if you get a bit set where it shouldn't be. So often a factory reset will solve a lot of your problems. So if you get something really strange on a radio, as long as you've got all the frequencies you've programmed in saved, a factory reset is certainly worth doing, and that should fix it. And the last thing I'm up to at the moment is I've got a marine band radio in for repair. One of the guys I work with is a sailor, and I'm looking at his marine band radio, and it looks pretty standard stuff. Inside there's a 4.55 kilohertz filter, crystal filter, and when the radios get dropped or if they get a bit of damp in them, they go a bit deaf, and this radio's quite deaf, so for the sake of a few pounds, well, about £4, it'll be working for him fairly soon. So just a couple of little tips there, and that's what I've been up to. I think we've all been pretty busy, guys. Right, I'd like to thank each and every one of you for joining us. I'd like to thank Mr. Chris Howard M0TCH.
Thanks, Martin and guys. It's been the usual fun.
Yeah, great. And Mr. Rothwell, you didn't get me into any trouble today, Martin, did you? M0SGL?
We're going out tomorrow, so there's all tomorrow to get you in trouble. Don't worry about it, Martin. It'll be fine.
Probably. I'd like to thank Mr. Durrant DD5LP.
Very welcome, and please be careful, guys. No falling off the roof tomorrow.
Oh, we don't want to do that. It's quite high, put it that way. It's well over 7 stories high. So,
yeah. Please take care.
Yeah, we'll take care. We'll be all PPE'd and everything.
Hey, it's our number 2 priority. Don't worry.
Yeah, I know. You like to say that. You'll frighten them at the hospital one day when you tell them that.
Yeah, I wouldn't tell them.
No. I'd also like to thank Mr. Frank Howell, K4FMH.
I'm glad to be here, and thank you for inviting me. I've been on top of hospitals myself, mate, so you take care.
Yeah, we'll do. And say we'll catch up with you soon, Frank. And last but not least, thanks for joining us, Bill. I did mention earlier on that you had a business meeting you had to attend, but thanks for joining us towards the end. Most appreciated. Mr. Bill Bars, WC3B.
Yes, thank you very much. And yes, sorry I'm late, but the meeting went a little long. A lot of changes.
No, it happens, Bill. Yeah, we've all been there. So all I'd like to do is wish you all 73s, and then we'll continue with the podcast. 73, guys.
73.
73.
Keep your amateur ham radio podcast advert free by donating less than a length of coax. Visit www.iccpodcast.com/donate now. For all the news, links and information, visit www.iccqpodcast.com.
Now it's time to have a look at the news in brief with me, Colin M6BOY. We start off with news here with the RSGB. They're introducing remote invigilation for the full licence exams. This expands the service they already offer, as they're already covering this on the foundation and intermediate licenses. Now the automated booking system is now open, and the first available dates for booking an actual exam will be from early October. So say visit the RSGB if you're interested in taking your UK ham radio licence, and they can sort out not only as I say getting you on the air, but also doing that with remote invigilation as well. So well played to them. Currently ongoing in Australia is a special event call sign, VI75 Whiskey Whiskey 2, and this is obviously to mark the 75th anniversary of the end of the Second World War. Commemorative call sign is in recognition of all those who served and those who were at home during the conflict, helping keep things going. Special QSL cards is available, and the picture has been named The Dancing Man. It's a photograph of a man who was filmed dancing on the streets of Sydney, Australia at the end of World War II upon receiving the news of the end of the war. So certainly an interesting one from there. And as I say, you can also get a downloadable version as well, which we'll put the link of this on the ICQ Podcast webpage, and you can also get a downloadable cert as well for this event. So certainly something to check out, and that's going to be running through until November the 11th. Last piece of news here on the News in Brief section. My friends and colleagues who are behind the Fox Mike Hotel Portal Operations Challenge, which is taking place next weekend on the 3rd and 4th October, they've wished to let it be known that there's an option to be patio portable. And what this basically means is you can have a station in your backyard, your garden, or indeed your patio, using equipment that you would otherwise have taken portable for the challenge is going to be allowed and included in the portable station classification of the contest. No existing ham radio infrastructure may be used, so the operator will need to set up the equipment that he or she would have been using if as operating portable on a mountain, etc., in their garden. And I say the only thing you can use is your power supply, your electrical power supply. So say no massive antenna in the back garden that can be assigned to that from there. The call sign will be the home call sign with no portable suffix, but the station class given in the exchange must be given as portable. So again, there's a link we're going to post on our website, obviously, which is all the information on this for you, say for the Portal Operations Challenge taking place next weekend. Just to let you know as well, if you're using login software, VK Contest Logger and November 1 Mike Plus software supports the challenge contest exchanges as well, so some of those login pieces of software will be available for you as well. So guys, I really hope you enjoy taking part in the contest weekend. I know the guys have been involved and done a lot of work on that, so I say I'm sure it's going to be a great event for everyone to get involved on. Right, now we head over to our features episode, and we're going to start with announcements from SDRPlay in relation to new software and hardware they're releasing, before moving on to a review of the Senhaix 8600 review by Chris Howard, Mike 0 Tango Charlie Hotel. As always guys, hope you enjoy.
And now what you've all been waiting for, this episode's feature from the ICQ podcast.
Well, welcome to our September meeting for the Certain Radio Society. Welcome to anybody that's not been. We've got a few guests on as well, so you're welcome as well. Thank you for joining us. This is our 5th meeting now via Zoom, and I think it's gone pretty well so far, so touch wood. It will be okay tonight. Apologies, Martin M1MRB couldn't make it tonight. He's jobbing both shifts, and tonight's a late shift for him, so he's not able to join us. And just so everyone is aware, we are recording this session, and this will go out on YouTube at some point in the future. And we may also use the audio as well for the ICQ podcast. So just so you're aware that that is the case. If you've got any questions, please put something in the chat window as usual, and we'll get you in at an appropriate time. So, probably aware tonight's meeting is we've got some guests tonight from SDRPlay. We've got John Hudson and Andy, both from SDRPlay, both co-founders, and they've got lots of interesting things to talk about. They've got some really nice products. So, John, I'm going to hand over to you because I think you're going to start off and introducing. There we go, John.
Oh.
There you are. Over to you.
Hello, and very, very warm welcome to everyone tonight. As Chris says, I'm John Hudson, and you'll meet Andy in a minute. And we're really here to share with you the latest news and information about SDRPlay and our products. And obviously, it would be nice to be with you in person, but that wasn't to be. But this hopefully could be the next best thing, and we can potentially make it quite interactive and maybe do some demos later on. I'm going to start by just giving a little bit of history about the company, the products. But before I do that, I should just say, as soon as Chris, because I've met Chris at various events in the past, but when he invited us to come to the Sutton and Cheam Radio Society, I instantly had memories from the most famous ham radio person of all time, who came from East Cheam, and of course that was Tony Hancock. So I had a chuckle reminiscing about that particular individual, who I think on balance probably didn't do a lot for the reputation of radio amateurs, but certainly was a talking point many years ago when I became G4 ABQ. So I'm the longest, well, in fact, I was the only radio amateur that joined SDRPlay. So more of that in a moment. I'm going to just run through some slides. I'm going to share my screen, and hopefully you can see my screen okay. The company is actually 6 years old. We're an all British company based in the UK, registered in the UK, and in fact, the original chips were designed in the UK by Myrix, and the company is a joint venture with the chip company Myrix, who really pioneered SDR radio technology some 14 years ago. They got into it as cellular phones were starting to have more and more broadcast reception, long wave in the UK. Obviously, FM was popular. In Japan, they actually had HD, not HD, but terrestrial TV reception. So having a very good wideband receiver technology, A to D converters, was essential, and Myrix really got this going. And then as time went on, probably the demand for the cellular phone reduced. Some high-end computers still use the technology, but the hobbyists were seeing the fantastic things they could do with cheap dongles, and it was kind of a no-brainer really to try and apply this cool chip technology to create a wideband receiver that could go really from like long wave up to gigahertz, and that's what we did. And my own background, I was with Texas Instruments, I was with Bluetooth chip company CSR, but I was a radio ham, and I knew some of the guys at Myrix, and they were real technology pioneers of the chip technology needed, and the systems technology and hardware. And we came together, and I adopted very much the kind of marketing and technical side of the marketing and sales. And you'll see Andy in a minute, who's really the architect when it comes to the software. And as I say, we manufacture here in the UK, both in Peterborough and up in Hartlepool, two different subcontract manufacturers. So all the board assembly, the pick and place, the bake, the assembly into the boxes, the test, everything's done here in the UK. There are probably still just two or three of you maybe who are still not so familiar with SDRs, but I don't want to sort of talk down to you. But if you're finding out about SDRs for the first time, what is an SDR? Well, it's a radio communication system where the components that have traditionally been implemented in hardware, so things like mixers and filters and amplifiers, they are all implemented in software on some kind of host computer. So I'm just going to show here the block diagram of our simplest product, the RSP1A, which is the sort of entry-level product. And over on the right-hand side, probably the crown jewels of this is the A to D converter, 14-bit analog to digital converter, which then interfaces over a USB cable to the host computer. But all those blocks in the middle, that's where a lot of the innovation has come, with quite complex filters across the whole spectrum from 1 kilohertz, essentially 0 megahertz, all the way to 2 gigahertz is the upper limit. These filters minimize the effects of unwanted mixing products caused by the fact that you've got such a wide open front end. And obviously the environment for listening is impacted a lot by strong interferers that can cause intermodulation and other problems. And so having specific broadcast band filters, unless you want to actually listen to those broadcast bands, we've got medium wave band, FM band, DAB band, where huge, hundreds of kilowatts transmitters may be locally causing, problems with these open wideband SDRs. So that's really just a simplified view of the architecture. And if we just look at the 3 products that we have at the moment, we're going to look at the RSP1A, the DX, and then the RSP Duo. And everything's glued together with the SDR Uno software in terms of unlocking the full capabilities of the hardware. So the 1A, as indeed all of them, gives you 10 megahertz of visibility anywhere between 1 kilohertz and 2 gigahertz. And all of the RSPs provide basic capability using Uno. There's only a single antenna port here, 50 ohm input for the RSP1A. But some of the other software that's coming from third parties, like some very powerful spectrum analyzer software and kind of source blocks for GNU radio and Raspberry Pi images, are there for all of the RSPs. A lot of people start out, if you've already got a transceiver, with an SDR as a PAN adapter. And really, if you're just using it as a PAN adapter initially, the RSP1A is fully capable of doing that. This is just a picture of GNU radio, which is a great way for understanding radio architectures and trying out new software, filters and other demodulators. It's very much a learning tool and great for the younger generation really to start to play with radio. One of the nice side effects of our products is that we have calibrated power measurement capability. So you can actually use the devices as a field strength meter. There's a logging facility, and you can build up a CSV file that you can analyze with Excel, do charting and so on. And this is great for the EMC people over at the RSGB. They do a lot of investigative work on sources of interference, and they find SDR Uno very good for that. I mentioned the spectrum analyzer function. This is totally separate from SDR Uno, and it just runs on all the RSPs and gives you the kind of traditional features you'd get on a piece of lab equipment. Again, the calibration is to within a dB or so, and it's there for free. So moving up, the big difference between the 1A and the DX is the multiple antenna ports, which starts to get really interesting because you can select with software which antenna. You can only have one at a time, but you can have this set up maybe for something with a mag loop, maybe on the BNC socket to handle LF and HF. You might have a dedicated Yagi for some specific band, or you might have a discone for sort of VHF, UHF. So 3 software selectable antenna ports, and we've also done quite a bit to introduce better handling of signals down at below 2 megahertz. So we've got this additional filtering, and we've also got what we call HDR mode, which is high dynamic range. Yeah. And then you can have accurate clocking from a GPS source. It's got a reference clock input, and it comes in a much bigger, chunky, nice black painted steel case. So I mentioned the high dynamic range mode below 2 megs. So this is particularly good for LF and VLF use. And the way it works is we have this band framing within SDR Uno, which I'll describe, which again is quite unique to our software, which really emulates the capabilities that you have in a traditional rig. And so what this does is basically when you click on the bands, you get a choice of bands, typically the lower hand bands, the upper hand bands, and we've also got quite a few broadcast bands in there. And then depending on which band you select, and then this is the ham lower band, you might click on 20 meters. And what this does for you is it sets up the decimation and span of the spectrum display to exactly match to the band of interests, rather than having to sort of twiddle around and center the band. So that's proved really popular. And in the case of the RSPDX, there's an additional band which is full of preset bands for below 2 megahertz. The top of the range, the dual tuner Rsp Duo, is getting a lot of interest now, as I think people are discovering what you can do with this. The most obvious thing is that as well as seeing any 10 megahertz chunk of spectrum, you can simultaneously visualize 2 megahertz anywhere in 2 different places across the whole spectrum. So this is, very powerful. You can also use it on the same frequency, which means it's fantastic for true real-time antenna or propagation comparisons. And so that's just the fact you've got two tuners under the same control system, but it's the fact that they share a common USB cable, which means that you've got the opportunity to do diversity demodulation. So that's either spatial or frequency or polarization. And also, depending on the frequencies, like down at HF, some of the distances have to be quite big. You can get enhanced signal reception, and you can also do the kind of noise cancelling, which isn't possible just with the excellent software noise filters. This is where you actually subtract noise from the other signal, which has got your wanted signal and a bit of noise. So just a few pictures on that. We've got, here we see the 2 simultaneous tuners of the Rsp Duo. In this case, the bottom one's on 40 meters, the top one's on the ATC aircraft band VHF. And another thing which is quite fun to do is you can have one of them looking at air traffic control and another one up at 1.09 gigahertz doing the dump 1090 ADSB telemetry information about all the flights and where they're going. And so that's something that we're working on a future plugin so that you don't have to separately launch all the different software needed there. So this is the picture just showing the control panel. In the case of the Duo, you have these 2 sliders for the 2 tuners, and you can independently set the gains of each of those inputs, as well as on this rosette here, you can drag the end of the little bar here, which the fact that's halfway between the inner circle, which is equal gain, and the outer circle, which is where you have twice the gain on one of the tuners. This is it's about 1.5 to 1 ratio here. And then you can actually drag it anywhere through 360 degrees to adjust the relative phase. And it uses a technique called MRC, maximum ratio combination, for signal enhancement. And that's in an automatic mode, which will optimize it for best possible signal. And then for interference rejection, that's best done in manual mode. And it's typically the sort of almost the opposite setting in terms of the phase. And here's just a visual showing, in this case, we had 2 different Bonito antennas, and we were able to enhance this signal that was coming out of this noise hump here, which was causing problems. On the website, we've got like a comparison chart that helps you to see what extra features you get by going up to the DX and the Duo, and we can take any questions on that. But I think probably the most exciting thing, I mentioned SDR Uno is all about unlocking the best from these RSPs, and a lot has been going on from the scanning that we introduced last year to the new stuff that Andy's going to talk about now. And I think after Andy's talk, there's an opportunity to maybe take any questions at that point. So I will pass it over to Andy.
Yeah, hi guys. Great, as John said, it's great to be here, and great that we can talk about all things SDR. So I've got a few more slides to go through with you guys. So just a quick brief on what we've released in the recent recently. We've new version of SDR Uno, which is 1.4, and we've got a number of things in 1.4 which we've been working on. But the big ticket item really was the plugin system. So we now have a system where we've produced some plugins, but also it's basically a framework for third-party developers to create plugins to interact with SDR Uno, take the stream from SDR Uno, and can also put an audio stream back into SDR Uno, as we do with the DAD plugin. I'll show you in a minute a couple of the plugins that we've launched with 1.4. But it's great to see that we've had some take up from a number of third-party developers already that are keen to add plugins to, specifically for things like controllers, which will be a video that I'll be doing very soon, and also things like reading databases of frequencies and displaying annotations of text on the screen. There's lots of things that the plugin system can do, and it's a completely free system that anybody can download, and anybody with a bit of coding knowledge can make it do pretty much whatever they want with SDR Uno. Really becomes essentially part of SDR Uno when it's launched. So that's really a big thing for us. What's great about that is that it kind of speeds up some of the development. A lot of people put in requests to us to do various things, and because we've got quite a long roadmap of stuff already, the plugin system enables a kind of a dual track approach. So rather than us being the gateway and the limiter for some of these things, it now frees up a whole raft of applications that could be done that really couldn't be done before. So that's had some really good take up, and we're really excited to see how that developed. There's a few other things. You can now start SDR Uno without an RSP connected. You can start with a WAV file, and this is quite useful to be able to. You can record IQ WAV files and share them with other people, and then they can use SDR Uno with those same WAV files. We also have some IQ WAV files that are downloadable from our website, and really the purpose of those was to show you how you can kind of get set up with some of the use cases. So, if you want to do things like slow scan TV, or if you want to get set up with some of the L-band reception and you're not quite sure what sort of signals you should expect to see or what you can achieve with an RSP, these files give you a great starting point. I wish I had them when I was learning about L-band, because I was struggling for a while to get anything that resembled anything usable. So I would have appreciated these files when I was doing that. But it's great that we've got them, and they're freely downloadable from the website. I won't bore you going through all of the different bullet points there, but we do try and cram in as many features and as many updates and fixes as we can to each of these releases. We did slightly change the approach of 1.4. We sort of had this release candidate process where we sort of gave access of the software to people earlier than we would normally have done, which I think was a great success. We got a lot of feedback, and the final release of 1.4 had probably the fewest amount of bugs in a full release as we've ever done. So I think we'll probably do more of that. We'll probably tweak the format slightly, but I think we'll do more of that going forward. Just so there was some fixes and improvements. So I did talk about the plugins. You can see what the plugins we have available on our website, and you can get some more information. The three that we produced, start the ball rolling as it were, was an audio recorder. So you can now record either WAV files or MP3 files straight from SDR Uno on the VFO that you're tuned to. We included a DAD plugin, so you can You listen to DAB and DAB Plus stations, and also a DX cluster plugin. And that really, I don't know if we've got information on that here. Yeah. So the DX cluster plugin basically allows you to tune to a cluster server, and it will continually pull contacts down from the server and then display them on the screen if they're actually obviously in the band that you're looking at the time. Obviously the server will contain contacts for all different bands, and then if you just tune around from band to band, if a contact has been seen within the last, you've got a timer there, you can set the timer, it defaults to 5 minutes. So any contact that's seen within that period of time will be shown up on the screen. So it's and we've put the source code for that actually up on our GitHub site. So anybody that wants to take that and play with that or use that as a starting point for something else is more than welcome to do so. Just an example of a plugin that we haven't had anything to do with. A gentleman called Eric Cottrell has developed, I think he's developed a couple of plugins now, but this one seems to be very popular. It's called Fran, which I think is, you've got it there, frequency annotation. And it will take a database of frequencies like broadcast, I think mainly broadcast frequencies, and it will plot them on the screen. So as you tune around, if there are any of those stations on the screen, then the frequency that you're within the sort of spectrum that you're viewing, then it will display that information for you on the screen. And that's been proven to be a very popular plugin. Yeah, so Eric's done some really great work, and I think he's going to continue to do some great plugins going forward. We also, a few revisions back of SDR Uno, integrated a scanner, and this is a fully functioning sort of channelized scanner. You can basically set a start, stop, and a step, and it will very quickly scan that entire region for you. There's a number of presets that we already set up inside SDR Uno for things like the mil air band, marine band, and literally you just set up your threshold of the level of the signal that you want to capture, and basically press scan, and it will just sit there and scan. I think it does the airband in a couple of seconds. So it's a pretty good scanner. And it's had a lot of testing, and it's been in there. It's been in Uno for quite a number of versions now. So it's had a few improvements, and it'll continue to get more improvements as well as we go forward. Just to kind of give you a little taste of where Uno is going, this is our roadmap towards 2.0, which 2.0 is cross-platform. So we're going on Mac OS and Linux, as well as obviously continue to develop on Windows. But before we get there, we've got to basically get some very long-standing feature requests in, and things like remote server client. So version 1.42 will have a server that will run on any platform. That could be Raspberry Pi, it could be a Linux or a Mac or Windows box, and then Uno will be the client, and that will be across either a LAN connection or a wide area network connection. We've got some great technology to do low bandwidth system across a wide area network. So we're quite excited to get to that point and bring that to everybody. I'm currently working on 1.41, where we've got the ability to have a generic scheduling function. So you'll be able to set things up like you'll be able to create profiles. So you might have an L-band profile, you might have an HF profile, and these will be all sorts of things inside Uno, things like setting up virtual audio cables. And so you'll be able to recall those profiles at a given time, and then you could either just sort of listen to whatever's there, or you could record what's there, or you could pass the data on to another application or use a plugin. So it's a very flexible system, and with all that work is underway. And so it's really, we've got a very simple IQ recording system inside Uno where you just specify a start and a stop. But this is going to be multiple actions. So you'll be able to set, maybe every Tuesday at 5 o'clock you want to do something. Maybe for the next 3 days in a row at 7 a.m. or something, you want to do something else. It's going to be a very flexible scheduling system. So that's coming. And then in 1.43, we're going to be improving some of the things I said about the scanner and the memory panel. We're going to have thresholds that are specific to frequencies and have a lot more customization. So you'll be able to customize things like the filter bandwidths that are fixed buttons at the moment. So there'll be a lot more customization that comes in. And then at that point, then the focus is just to get 2.0 down, which is that's obviously cross-platform GUI update, so you can have the ability to lock windows together to create a single platform, so a single panel, as it were. And then obviously for non-Windows support, we're going to have another rig control application. It'll probably be something like HamLib rather than OmniRig, which is currently Windows only. But we're very focused on this roadmap, and this is basically what I do. So that's really it now. It's really it from me. So I don't know if anybody has any, if we have any questions at this point, or I can hand over to Chris.
Yeah, sure. Let me just notify again in the chat window. I'm just going to allow people to unmute themselves. Has anybody got any questions? Feel free to unmute yourself. You can ask Andy or John. Let me go back to Andy then. Hang on a second.
Yeah, I probably didn't explain that very well. So when we go over to cross-platform, obviously we'll continue to support OmniRig. We always will do support OmniRig for as long as that application keeps going. But for non-Windows platforms, OmniRig doesn't work on them. So we'll have to, for those platforms, we'll have to have another rig control system. It'll probably be HamLib, but I won't be putting HamLib in place of OmniRig. It'll be OmniRig for Windows, as it always has been, and then it'll be HamLib or something along those lines for the other platforms.
Yes, Richard just asked a question on that one. Thank you for answering that. In fact, I was about to say the same thing. I use OmniRig, and I struggle to get anything else to work but OmniRig with my Yaesu rig. So that's
yeah, we have a great relationship with Alex. We spoke to him just recently because he's got his own framework system. We've talked about how the two, how our plugin and his framework systems can work together. And he was telling us about the sort of work that he's doing with OmniRig and with his other software. And so we'll continue to support OmniRig. It's I know there is a kind of a version 2 that's floating around. He doesn't support it. He doesn't approve of it. They've taken his code without any acknowledgement to him, and he's offered to actually make it. He's offered them some code to make it compatible with OmniRig, his version of OmniRig, which I think that they haven't done. So we continue to support his version. We do not support that other version that's around.
I think, Stuart, do you want to ask you a question? I opened the chat window, but you should be able, I think you can unmute yourself, and there you go.
Yeah, a useful facility would be to measure frequency deviation for setting up FM rigs, etc. Is that on your roadmap anywhere? Or maybe it's even there?
Sorry, measuring frequency deviation
of an FM signal.
So, yeah, I have heard this a couple of times. It's not been... Thank you for reminding me. And hello, Stuart. It's something that we haven't really looked at, but it's on a list I've got of stuff that we ought to talk about at some point. But because, in fact, no one's raised that recently, it's not something that we've ever really thought about. But yes, in theory, the information's there. We can see what the deviation is, and if so, basically, this is like for narrowband FM. Obviously, it's of interest to make sure that people aren't over deviating, and you want to see that it's within certain limits, and it could even flag that. But it's not really something we've talked about, Andy, unless you have with some of the other guys.
No.
But let's take a note of that, Stuart, and give it some thought.
Oh, I mean, you could do it by the Bessel function method, which is hard, right? I just wondered whether it was possible to do it directly. It's part of the as part of your sort of technically test equipment sort of package that you have.
And there may be something, just the fact, it'll be to do with the way the bins work and but maybe some of what we're doing on the visual side lends itself to a crude estimate. It may not be quite as accurate as a proper.
Crude is probably good enough for this sort of world.
Yeah, but that's a good one. I've made a note.
So on that sort of subject, how do you go about, obviously you've got a big roadmap there of things that are coming along with the product. How do you go about picking, or, how do you get feedback? How do people let you know? How do you choose what it is you want to, move what direction you want to go in?
It is really based on sessions like this, particularly, obviously normal years we meet people face to face and you kind of get a kind of intensity of discussion going and you start to see common themes, and then it really, if the same thing's coming up several times, we don't start to investigate and then look. And it's obviously a trade-off. Some things are almost impossible to do. Some things are, some work, and then we can kind of plan for it. So it's a bit of a kind of iterative process, but anybody who has suggestions for things that we could consider, we have an email address, feedback@sdrplay.com. We don't promise to answer all those emails, but we absolutely read every one of them. So, that's probably a good way. I mean, we do participate in the forums as well. We can't, again, necessarily comment on everything, but, if there's a group of people starting to say similar things on a forum, that obviously nudges us to at least look, is this something we can consider? So it's kind of informal, but hopefully we're out there engaging with the community and able to then, through that process, is what ends up on Andy's roadmap that you saw. It comes from that sort of process. I don't know if you want to add anything, Andy, from your side.
No, I mean, it's pretty much as you described it, John, really. I mean, you like you say, you kind of look at, if you look on the forums, and when we talk to people, like you say, a number of themes come up. Scanning was something that we was asked to do very early on, and I think it was well received when it was finally in. The remote server support has been another very long-standing thing that we just need to kind of get on and do. It's, we get lots and lots and lots of requests and suggestions to do all sorts of things. I think the great thing now about having the plugin system is that we're not the bottleneck that we were before 1.4 necessarily. There are a number of people now that are that have sort of. We've got a number of people. If you come to our plugins site, you'll see some names of people that are there happily writing plugins, and they'll take. I think I saw Eddie McDonald, who was the guy who wrote some plugins for these controllers. I don't know if anybody's sort of familiar with these Shuttle Express controller. It's actually plugged in, so I'm having difficulty holding it up. But there's a couple of different shuttle plug-in controllers, and he's written a plugin to adapt those controllers into SDR Uno. So I'll be doing a video on that very, very soon. And I think there's another person doing some accessibility type stuff, John, I think. And but Eric's very very proactive. He's doing a number of different things as well on plug-in fronts. Well, I think it's good. That list of people who will do the plugins will just continue to grow, which is great. And those guys do go on the forums as well as us, and so I'm sure they'll see some synergy in what they're doing and some plugins, and hopefully the two things will come together. But it's great that we're not the bottleneck that we have been up until now for a lot of this stuff.
You mentioned videos as well. I know you've got a lot of things on YouTube. I know there's a very active Facebook group. How much time? I know you got Mike. I think he's still with you. That does a lot of the support work around software.
There's a number of us that have been doing videos. Sometimes we do them all together, which has been quite interesting. We've got Mike Ladd, who's in the States. He does a number of the videos specifically for like use cases and ham radio uses. We've got a guy called Steve, he's a Brit, but he's in the States. He does. He's been doing a lot of videos recently on things like troubleshooting, how to. In fact, I think he did another one yesterday, John, if that's right.
Yes, on just the things that can occasionally go wrong when you're installing new software, and it's really a kind of troubleshooting video, so it covers just about everything that could ever go wrong. So that's quite good. So yeah, we all chip in and have our strengths and weaknesses and try and complement each other. But in fact, I was going to come on and say a bit more about, some of the resources that are out there to help support products. And but underlying it all is very much the community. Particularly the independent Facebook group is now over 14,000 people, and given that there's probably 40% of the population would never go anywhere near Facebook, it shows the level of support and interest. We've also got a Groups.io forum and another more sort of traditional forum, and each has its different pros and cons. The Facebook group's great for real-time, maximum number of comments and very quick reactions and answers, but it's not so good as a resource if you kind of know that someone must have been talking about this on Facebook. Trying to go back and find stuff with the search function can be a bit frustrating, whereas the more formal forum, it's easier to find stuff.
I have another question, if I may ask it.
Yeah.
So you're going to do a server at some stage. Will you be doing, or have you already done, and I haven't noticed it, a sort of system like your major competitors got, where all the users can pool their receivers so that third parties can listen to them? But one of the uses we have in the club is that we have a shared SDR sitting at the club, and then we have a 10-meter net, and then people on the edges of the net can just listen at the club and hear everything instead of if they can't hear it themselves. And I just wonder whether you were going to make that sort of thing available on your platform.
I think you're talking something about like OpenWebRx, something like that.
Well, yeah, like the SDR Sharp has got.
Not sure. You mean the?
So it's got a community of receivers, and you can connect into the receiver you want to connect to and use it as if it was at home. I think maybe that's the same thing. There are lots of these packages around. We
have a TCP server already.
Right, but you need the sharing infrastructure so that you don't have to configure all of your users. Your users just go up to a site that
like a web SDR type.
Yeah.
But multiple to the same one, or is that important, Stuart? But obviously one person has
confused. So the server that we produce is not going to be a one-to-many. It's going to be a one-to-one.
Right. So there's your competitor has got a one-to-many system, and it's really useful for club nets and also for club sharing. Right. So you put one receiver at a good site, and then you can all listen on that receiver.
Okay, so that's like OpenWebRx, I guess.
Okay.
Is that right?
Yeah, I don't know. I've not met that one. Oh. The one we've been using is SDR Sharp, which is, as I say, a competitor's product.
Yeah.
So OpenWebRx allows you to the server defines the center frequency and the amount of spectrum you see.
Yep.
But then anybody can then sign up to that.
Yeah, that's it.
And then choose any part of that spectrum. So that already exists. OpenWebRx already works and does that.
Yeah. Good. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
In fact, I think I did a video. I've done a video on that, John, didn't I? Yeah. If you search on our YouTube channel, you'll find a video on that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I think I take you through the configuration of it and the setup of it.
Yeah, that's a really useful sort of club resource, right? Because as I say, you can have one low noise receiver that you share, and as I say, we've been using it as a half repeater for extending the size of our nets.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, OpenWebRx is pretty much, I think, got that functionality.
Okay.
But then, of course, there are other alternatives like SDR Console is supporting all our RSPs. Again, that's one-to-one. But
no, one-to-many is kind of important in this application because, particularly for the net, where, as I say, you have one centrally placed receiver that everyone can transmit into, and then a much larger number of the club members can take part in the net.
Yeah, that's good. Okay, thank you. Shall I just crack on with finish off the formal
Go ahead, John.
Yeah, why not? That may stimulate a few more questions as we go. So I'm going to. So just a few comments that, and particularly if anyone out there is trying to attract new members into a ham radio hobby, then often it can be a way in through other peripheral sort of uses of radio that could be attractive. And I was going to just go through one or two examples that sort of sit on the side and for which the RSPs are proving very popular. And you can read for yourself, even across industrial and various sort of educational scientific areas, there's a lot going on. In fact, we've been sponsoring the University of Rome La Sapienza to write a course centered around satellite reception. So it's actually a practical course for students who are perhaps learning adjacent technologies like aerospace technology and, have an interest in radio. It's a great way, using an SDR, to get into that. And it's a very practical course involving an Arduino, making a little transmitter, and then using SDR Uno to receive it, and as you do decoding and the whole thing. So that's the sort of thing that's hopefully will help to stimulate an interest in radio in another generation. So that's all going on. And, I think Chris himself has done quite a bit in the club there to promote the use of pan adapters. And with all the main transceivers, we've talked already quite a bit about OmniRig. And again, there's a lot of resources on our website and videos to help you navigate through the various configurations needed to ensure that you don't damage the radio, the RSP. And people often ask the question, well, why don't you put great big rugged protection in the RSP? And the problem is really that if it was only an HF SDR, then we could probably go a lot further. But as you get up into VHF, UHF, and into microwaves, then any attempt to add more beefy protection up front would also have significant performance issues at those high frequencies. So that's the background. And it's not just us. You'll find all SDR receivers need to be treated with respect. We say, 10 milliwatts for short periods or a milliwatt continuously, 0 dBm, really is what you need to make sure your system is limited to. But the great thing is with SDR Uno having the calibrated RF level, you can start out with a suspect transmitter that you think's okay, and start just down at a few watts and don't crank it up. Don't turn the linear on until you've absolutely convinced yourself that you're keeping the RF levels to a safe level. So there's lots about that and various other accessories, TR switches and things that can be bought for all the popular transceivers. I think Andy mentioned in Marsat is great fun to just see all the messaging that goes on at sea and other places where the internet isn't quite so prolific or reliable. And, one of our resellers, SDR Kits, has specialized in these little L-band patch antennas, which are really good for picking up satellite signals. Hopefully you can still see that. That's just a graphic showing pan adapter. There are these other fantastic images that you can pick up as in real time. These are geostationary operational environmental satellites, which are taking these very, very high resolution pictures of the Earth. And these are, I forget how many million pixels, but you can blow this up and see hurricanes, and even like where there's fires burning, you can see smoke, some really impressive weather effects and so on. It's just something that, in conjunction with software from USA Satcom, you can decode the software and then do image enhancement and post-processing to get some very impressive pictures. So these are all things on the side of ham radio that actually can be very attractive to play with. So we talked about the YouTube channel, and also we have this applications and support catalog, which again is a searchable resource. You can search by keywords, and there's several hundred video links, including some third-party links, documents and so on. And so it's a really powerful resource on all the sorts of things you can do with an RSP. We have our own Facebook news page, so that's where you get to hear about upcoming releases and news of third parties, new plugins, that kind of thing. We've already talked about the forums. Again, we'll make these slides available via Chris, with the links to the various forums out there. One of the things we've recently introduced is quite an interactive technical help system, which includes our ticket system, so you can always get one-to-one support. But initially, you just go to the help page, which is sdrplay.com/help, click on technical help, and then just put in your particular RSP, your operating system, and software that you're using, and then you will be guided into some FAQs, and that can go down another level in terms of the common things, and you might just find, oh yeah, that's my problem, and you may just get instant help. We mentioned Steve's new video from yesterday, the SDR FAQ installation. That's a nice video there. Going on down a level, common questions that we get, but if that doesn't answer it, you can still raise a ticket, and we'll support anybody independent of where they got their RSP. We draw the line at some of these RSP1 clones or fake RSP1As that might be out there. You probably won't get much support from us should you have one of those. But wherever you buy from one of the many resellers and channel partners on the distributors page, or whether you purchase directly from us, we'll make sure that we do our best to try and support what you're trying to do. So that was really just the last few things I wanted to say, but hopefully that's given people time to have another think about any.
We do have some questions. So Paul's got a question about satellites. Paul, do you want to ask your question?
Are we able to set an offset so that we can view the actual frequency when we're, say, using an LNB?
Andy, do you want to?
Yeah, no, not at the moment. So that's something that we're going adding in. But there is a facility for offset support in Uno, but it won't go up to the whatever gigahertz you need, tens of gigahertz. It's really just for less than 2 gigahertz support. But we will be adding in the satellite support and also the tracking as well.
Oh, that'll be good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks.
At the moment, I think people are using SDR console to some degree for some of that with the RSPs.
Thanks for the question, Paul. We've got another question from Adrian. Adrian, go on to...
Just wondering what sort of an antenna is suggested as a recommended antenna for portable use. I go overseas twice a year, and I've purchased the RSP1, which arrived today. Thank you very much.
Oh, okay, good. So, what frequencies are you most interested in, Adrian?
Definitely well and truly below 2 gig. But obviously, a HF antenna is what I'm asking for is probably not going to be an option. But mainly VHF, UHF.
Yeah, I mean for HF, the active magnetic loops, I mean they cost probably more than the RSP in some cases, but those are, I mean, there's meter diameter loops, but you can even
going to do kilogram with it.
Or the mega loop is actually a wire that you can construct. When you get where you're going, and in fact, there's some videos from Oxford Shortwave of him on balconies all around the world with his RSPs and one of these Bonito mega loop antennas. Oh, look, Andy's waving one.
It's a mini whip. Sometimes these are these are pretty good. It depends. The trouble is, I've not had very much luck with antennas. Probably the best thing I have is I don't know if you probably can't see it, but it's a loop there. That's about the best thing I have, and I have it indoors. I've got a G5RV up and over my roof. Won't beat that.
Yeah, I think Wellbrooks and the Bonito magnetic loops are very, very impressive. At a low, you don't have to get them high up. Just, I mean, even indoors they'll do some good, but when you're out and about, that's, I mean, the traditional way of doing it was, you know, a stone, some string, and get a wire up over some trees. Are you talking about being static, Adrian, wherever you want to go with your RSP?
Yeah, from a hotel balcony or something.
Sorry?
From a hotel balcony or something.
Hotel
like that.
balcony. So, yeah, probably an active magnetic loop like the mega loop, where you just construct it. If you go on YouTube and just search for Oxford shortwave and loop antenna, you'll find these demos, and they're pretty good.
This is what I use for VHF and UHF, just a little 2-meter antenna. It works fine.
Yeah.
So, and it's magnetic, so it'll sort of, you know, attach to something.
Yeah, whip antennas will get you your line of sight, and again, if you're at a good high up location, you'll be able to pull in 2 meters repeaters and stations from you know.
I mean, I've actually used that on Dump 1090 as well, up at a gigahertz. It works.
So where have you used it, Andy?
Sorry, Adrian?
Yeah, where did you say you've used it?
Yeah, so I've used these little 2-meter antennas for doing things like Dump 1090, you know, the ADSB reception.
Yeah, I'm doing that also up at here at home and up at the local aero park.
Yeah, and I made my own antenna as well, which is I just got like sections of coax.
Oh yeah,
about that long, about 8 of them.
Yeah.
And then you dovetail them, so the centre of one connects to the outer of the other.
I've tried making one of those, but never had much success.
Yeah, well, I made one, stuck it in a bit of tube so I can put it outside, and I mean, I'm in, just to give you an idea, I'm in Kent, and I can see with that thing hanging on my guttering outside, I can see planes up at Hull.
Okay.
So you know, you get a few hundred miles range easily.
The best antenna that I've built for 1090 is one that is a Coke can cut it to, I think it was 67 millimeters or something like that, with the equivalent element as well sticking out the end of it, and that from the East Midlands Airport, where the aero park is, we were getting well and truly into France from there.
Good.
And it's the best antenna I've built yet. But I was actually going to ask about it one for game. I might give that coax one another go.
Yeah. I think we're looking at some innovative, futuristic designs around the old ferrite rod technology, because that's sort of been a bit neglected, I think, ever since medium wave became less popular. And having a wideband antenna somehow using ferrite technology would be a bit of a holy grail. So we're looking at some ideas on that. Nothing to announce yet, but for right now, I think active loops for HF are the best bet. But if you're somewhere with trees and just lengths of wire slung up over trees, that they'll give you great reception across a huge range of frequencies, right up into VHF. Probably not Dump 1090 particularly good, but
okay, thank you. Thanks, Chris.
Thank you, Adrian. Just going to mute you because we've got a bit of background noise there. Anybody else got any questions or comments for Andy or John?
Other suggestions for things we've picked up some good ones already. Thank you very much. But
I'd actually quite like to be where Richard is. That's quite picturesque there.
I'm not sure if Richard's trying to talk or whether he's. I think everyone can unmute themselves.
Oh yeah, Richard's got this fantastic panorama. Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else got any other questions or comments or feedback or
feedback, because are we covering the sort of thing that's interesting, or was this a bit bit tame, or I don't know? Were you looking for more technical
I thought it was good.
Or, just let us know.
Is there a tutorial on getting it to work with GNU Radio?
We don't have a video.
We
Or
have
do we? Oh, John, you have.
we have a video that we've got a little video that shows setting it up using our SD card image on a Raspberry Pi. Literally, just how to launch it, and then it obviously relies on the source blocks that exist.
I thought you did the Windows version, John, with the zip file. Downloading the zip file. I'm sure.
Yeah. That's all. Oh, is that? No, I used Windows to download the SD card that then went into the Raspberry Pi.
Worth searching. I think it's worth searching on our YouTube channel.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, or the apps catalog, even just.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
You'd probably get quite a few takers for a lecture on that subject.
Yes, in fact, we did participate in one of the. Were you there, Stuart? The RSGB did something at Milton Keynes a couple of years ago with.
Yeah, we did it with those cheap little tiny SDRs.
That's right. But at the very end, they let us in just to because I think at that
point
I remember, we'd only just proved the principle,
right?
And we just showed, look, you can it will actually work with an RSP1A. And then soon after that, we went on to create the SD card image. That's in fact it works with all three SDRs. And the other thing, Stuart, very soon we'll have this university material, which is freely available. I mean, it's designed for the educational community, but we can share with you.
Thank you.
The PowerPoints that actually show you from scratch how to get up and running with an RSP1A on GNU Radio.
Perfect. That's exactly what I want. I'll give you a university address if you need it.
Okay, that's good. Send me a separate.
Yes.
And then I'll follow up from that.
Thank you.
In fact, John has forgotten he did do a video for GNU Radio on Windows, and it is on our YouTube channel.
Thanks, Andy. Yeah, it's coming back slow.
It basically shows you how to download it, how to get it up and running. I think we provided an example and how to compile it and run it. So, yeah.
Perfect. Thank you very much for a most interesting talk.
Thanks, Stuart.
Thank you.
Yeah. Anybody else got any cracks? There's a few things in the chat window. I'm not sure if they're questions or just things people want to put in the chat window. But did you want to come in at all, or did you just put something in the chat window there, or not? No. Okay, fine. Not to worry. Okay, just to point out so that's all. Okay. Anybody else got anything else before we finish up? No. Okay.
Well, thank you very much.
Oh,
Chris,
hang on a minute.
Here we are.
Richard's holding something up, but I'm not sure. Are you trying to come in, Richard? Just let me see if I can unmute you. I've unmuted you now. If that helps.
Yeah, it's SDR1 Play. Yeah.
Oh, you got one. Okay.
Yeah,
you got the
it works with it works with the IC7300 as a PAN adapter perfectly.
Oh, thanks, Richard. That's good.
Actually, far better to see a big waterfall display than that little one. Having to put varifocals on to go and see it. Yeah, well done. Thanks very much.
Okay, so I think that's, unless anybody else, his last chance to ask Andy, the guy that writes the software, or John, that both guys have done a huge amount of work with this platform. Here's your opportunity to ask the question. Have you got anything else? It's your last chance. Okay, well, I think in that case, we'll thank you both very, very much for your time. That's been an excellent presentation, and thank you very much for your time. And we'll look out for the new versions of things coming out in the future. Looking forward to that. So. Thank you, guys, and wish you all the best.
Well, thanks to all of you.
Yeah,
really enjoyed it.
Thank
you very much.
Nah, I don't like either. But I do like operating my ham radio rig outdoors. But on contest days, well, the superstations always seem to win. So here's the deal. The steering committee has taken a bulldozer to level the playing field between the big guns and the little pistols in the Fox Mike Hotel Portable Ops Challenge, October 3rd and 4th, 2020. See foxmikehotel.com and click the POC tab. Will you take the challenge?
Hi there, it's Chris M0TCH here, and I've been lucky enough to have been sent a radio to review, the Senhaix 8600, which is a dual-band handheld made in China. Now this radio features 5 watts output on both the 2 metre and 70 centimetre bands. However, be careful, this will transmit outside the amateur bands, so just be careful when you hit that PTT button. It's also got an FM broadcast receiver, so you can listen to your favourite tunes when you're not working the amateur bands. Now, bear in mind, this is an FM radio, it's not a DMR, a Fusion or a D-Start radio, this is purely an analogue radio. In the box you get the radio, an aerial, there's a battery, and in fact the battery's quite nice, it's 2 amp hours, so it's got plenty of capacity there for a whole day's use. You also get a hand strap, you get a belt clip and a drop-in charger. There's also a manual. Now the one I received through the post didn't have in the box the manual. Now I think that's because this is a pre-production model, but I've since been sent a copy of the manual by the dealer, and it's actually not bad. It's not perfect English, but it's perfectly readable and it makes sense. The manual is 17 pages. The radio itself is, as I was saying, I know it's a handheld radio. It's got quite a nice design. It's quite sort of funky. It's got a grey inlay front. The plastic it's made from is quite solid and quite meaty. It feels good in the hand. It's quite a nice shape. It's obviously been well designed. It fits really nicely in the hand. It weighs 270 grams or 9.5 ounces, so it's not the lightest of radios, but it actually does feel pretty solid, which is great. On the front, there's the keypad, so you can type in frequencies and you can change things like the memory channel you're in, that sort of thing. And there's also a menu button, a left and right arrow buttons, an exit button as well. So that's the front. It's also got a colour screen. The screen's quite nice, like I say, it's colour, but what I would say is the font that's being used is quite small. So if you do struggle with your eyesight, you may need your reading glasses on for this one because it's a little bit on the small side. There's also on the front an LED which will light red when you're in transmit and green if you're receiving another station. On top of the radio there is a knob, and that's used to control the audio, the output, the volume of the speaker. And the speaker is quite loud, which is quite a nice feature. And it's also, the knob's also used to control on and off as well. So you switch in the radio, a nice click. I'll do it now. A nice click, and then the knob is used to control the volume. On the left-hand side of the radio, there are 2 PTT buttons. You might be thinking why there are 2. Let me explain. So this radio has 2 bands, band A and band B. So on the front of the radio, on the display, you will see 2 frequencies or 2 memory channels, however you got the radio configured at the time. And what's happening is, if you switch on the dual standby feature, which is a menu option which I'll go into in a minute, then the radio will monitor those 2 frequencies, and if it hears something on either frequency, it will change the receiver to listen to that particular channel or that particular frequency. Now, this is not a dual receive radio. It's not, you can't listen to 2 at the same time. It will monitor 2 frequencies, and then if it hears something on one, the radio will flip to that particular receiver, or that particular frequency. Likewise, if it hears something on the other frequency, then you'll hear it on that. So basically, if you configure it with 2 different frequencies, it will keep monitoring either of them, and as soon as it hears something, it will flip to that particular frequency. However, if there are 2 things happening at the same time, if you have someone talking on one frequency and someone else talking on another frequency, you'll only hear one of those people. You'll only hear the first person that spoke. So it's not a true dual receiver. But nonetheless, that is a useful feature. Now I mention that because the reason it's got on 2 PTTs is the top PTT is for the first frequency, the first one, the top line on the display, if you like, and the bottom button is the lower receiver, or the lower frequency on the display. So depending on which button you press, depends on which frequency you'll transmit on. So the idea is, I suppose this could be useful if, let's say, you're listening to one station and you're relaying information to another, then you could use the 2 buttons to talk to each station, which might be useful. However, you have got to be careful, because if you press the wrong button, you'll be on the wrong frequency when you transmit. So that's one thing you need to be careful about. There is also a 3rd button on the side of the radio, and that is a multifunction button. And what that's used for is to switch on the FM broadcast receiver, or I think if you hold it in, it will change the power from low to high or high to low, depending on what it's set to at the moment. On the right hand side of the radio, there is a flap. Under that flap, there are sockets for a speaker mic or for an earpiece. That same socket can also be used to program the radio via a computer. Now, it doesn't come, I don't believe, or certainly one I received didn't come with the programming cable, but you can get the programming cables for these, and I would highly recommend you do that, and that allows you to program the radio rather than using the radio itself, using the front panel, to do it via a computer. Now, software is downloadable for this from Senhaix, and I have played with it myself, and it works. However, one thing I did find was when I first used it, and I downloaded what was in the radio already, I got some error messages on the screen, and the errors were in Chinese, so I wasn't able to understand what they meant. By clicking OK, the errors went away, and I was able to successfully program the radio, but there were some errors all nonetheless, so that's something you need to be aware of. You can also program the radio on the front panel. However, that's a lot more work, and I find, make life easy for yourself. Using the computer makes it a much simpler task. Other features, so this radio has 128 memories, so you can save what's in either of those two bands into memory, and then go into memory mode and recall that. So when you program repeaters, you can program them into memories, and then later on you can go back and recall that and have them in channels. Likewise, so you're aware, you can also use names with each channel. So you can set, say, the repeater's call sign, for example, for each channel, or maybe some other text to help you to figure out what channel that relates to. On the back of the radio, just to finish off the physical characteristics, you've got the battery. And as I was saying earlier, the battery is 2 amp hours. That's quite a decent capacity, and I think that would last you pretty much all day if you were to use this radio, at an event, for example. Now, the battery is attached by a screw. That screw can be undone by just a coin or a small screwdriver. It's fine. What I really like about this radio, and the battery in particular, is the fact you can charge it via USB. On the battery itself, there is a micro USB port, and that lets you connect this directly into a USB charger. So when you've got that box like I have in your shack of lots of different cables all tangled up for different radios that you run, with this one you don't need to do that. All you need is a USB cable, plug it into a USB charger, and you can charge it. There's a little LED indicator next to the USB port which tells you whether it's finished charging or still charging, so that's also quite useful. On the radio itself, you can also check the state of the battery by holding down the 0 button, and that will show on the screen the battery voltage, which can be useful again if you're using it over a period of time to know if you need to charge it or not. There's also a little indicator as well showing battery charge as well. It does come with a drop-in charger. I haven't had to use that. I've just plugged it straight into a USB connection, and that works pretty well. I think where it's also really good is if you were to buy a second spare battery, you can charge it off the radio. So you're not having to tie up the radio to charge with the batteries. You can plug it into a USB connector or into a USB charger, and you can charge the battery and then have the spare one on charge while the other one's in the radio. So I think that's quite another nice. I really like this USB charging facility. Now, I must point out that is purely for charging. You can't program the radio using USB. It's just for charging the battery. But I really do hope that other manufacturers see what's been done here and copy this, because I think it's a really, really good idea. And I would love to be able to do away with all that tangle of cables that I've got in my shack and just plug things in via USB. It makes life so much easier. The mobile phone world have done this for years and years and years now, and it's just time that the radio manufacturers followed suit. And I'd also like it as well, so that I can also program the radio as well via USB, and not having to have lots of different programming cables as well. But that's a good start. The fact they've got the USB is great for charging at least. I like the display. As I was saying, the display is colour, and this is a nice radio. It looks nice, and it's something you need to look at yourself. If you're thinking of buying one, please look online and have a look at a picture of one. It does feel nice in the hand. It is well built. It does feel good, and it's fairly rugged. It's clearly designed for use outdoors. I don't know if it's waterproof. There are various things that are under flaps. Certainly the USB port on the back and the port on the side for plugging the speaker mic are under flaps, which makes me think it's got a level of waterproofing, but I don't suppose that's guaranteed. So it certainly would survive a rain shower, I would suggest. It also features voice prompts, so if you're someone that's got a visual disability, not able to see very well, it will speak to you. It tells you, for example, when you go into memory mode or if you go into frequency mode. You can turn it off if you want to, you can switch it on, it's up to you. I turned it off because I find it quite annoying after a while, but it is something that you might find useful if you struggle to see. The menu system is fairly easy to use. The menu is used to do things like set up the squelch, the transmit power, various timeouts, busy channel lockouts, and things like repeater offsets and CD6S tones, things to program it for repeaters. The menu is fairly straightforward and fairly easy to follow. It's not difficult. However, some of the other features are not quite so obvious. So, for example, to change between memory mode and VFO mode, you hold down the menu button. That's not obvious without you play with the radio or read the manual. Likewise, to change between the top and the bottom bands, the A and the B bands, you press the exit button. Again, that's not completely obvious unless you've read the manual or you play with the radio. I mentioned about software, so yes, you can use software from Senhaix. I mentioned about the area that you get. I have also checked Chirp, which is the open source free software that's used to program menu radios, does not yet support the Senhaix, or this particular Senhaix radio. I don't know if they're planning to do in the future, but that would be nice if they did, because I quite like that software. There is, however, an issue with this radio that I found when playing with it, and that was to do with programming. So, as I was saying, you can program it on the computer, and that works absolutely fine apart from the error messages that you may get. However, if you're programming the radio on the radio itself on the front panel, I did find a problem, and that was, so if I were to configure the VFO to work with a repeater, so I set an offset and set a tone, that works absolutely fine. But when I then save that into memory, what I found was it actually lost the offset. Now, this is only a problem if you're programming the radio on the front panel. It works absolutely fine via a computer, but just so you're aware, that is a bit of an issue, and it's something that I've reported back to the dealer, who I know have also reported it back to the factory, so hopefully they'll fix that quite soon. I think that may require some kind of firmware update or something, but for me that was a bit of that's a little bit of a letdown, because it's a nicely built radio. I think that for me has let things down a little bit. Okay, so finally, what does it cost and where can you buy these? Well, in the UK, this was sent to us by Moonraker, so thank you to Chris at Moonraker for sending us this copy, this one to play with. I've had it a couple of weeks now. The price is $59.99 and is available from moonraker.eu. I'm also aware that there is another model in the range. Now, I haven't had my hands on this particular other model. So this one I'm playing with today, I'm talking about today, is the 8600, which is $59.99. There is another version, which is the 8800, which is £10 more expensive, but that features, and I haven't played this myself, but I have seen it on the online. This features Bluetooth programming. So that allows you to use an app on your mobile phone, either Android or for Apple, for iOS, and lets you do the programming via a phone, and you connect to the radio via Bluetooth. Now, I think that's probably a nice thing to see. I've not played it myself, but if I was spending my own money, I'd probably spend the extra £10 and buy that version. That version also comes with a built-in flashlight or torch, or quite a large one on the bottom of the radio as well. So that's an option. If those things don't interest you, then go with this one, which is for $59.99. If you want the one that has the Bluetooth programming and the built-in torch, then probably go with the one that was £10 more, the 8800, which has got an orange plastic front rather than this one, which is grey. Anyway, that's enough of me talking. I hope you found that helpful, and thank you very much for listening.
Well, everybody, I really hope you're enjoying this extra long episode of the ICQ podcast here for episode 334. We'd like to thank the guys at SDRPlay and the Sutton Team Amateur Radio Society for allowing us to use their audio and discussion with the guys there at SDRPlay to give you an update on what they're doing for our hobby. And also like to thank our friend and colleague Chris Howard, Mike Zero Tango Charlie Hotel, for his review on the Senhaix 8600. Now, I'm sure there's probably a lot of debate about how that's pronounced, but that's what I'm going to go with there. As always, as we always point out with product reviews, this review was sent in to us for evaluation, and the person sent it into us, the dealer sent it into us, signed up to our terms and conditions, which are on our website, where basically we review it on face value. So there's no financial inducement for that review. It is, say, Chris's opinion on the unit as he used it there for a couple of weeks before providing that review. So, guys, hope you find those couple of features there of great interest to yourself. So, Dad, certainly a very busy episode for our listeners, but as always we say, we've got great information, we'll produce it and bring it to everybody. I just wonder, is there anything that we need to cover off before we, go away for a couple of weeks to refresh and produce our next episode?
Well, not really, apart from there's a lot coming up in the next few months, or next few episodes, actually. We've got some good stuff happening. Just to whet people's appetites, so keep on listening. And I'm sure you've mentioned it, the Portable Apps Challenge that Frank, Bill and Ed have been working on happens next weekend.
It certainly does, and I'd love to hear from all you guys who take part on that. And I think it's a great idea, isn't it, though, to even out the playing field for the non-contesters to enjoy contesting, and the guys on the smaller rigs, etc., not to get blown out the water. I think it's a fantastic opportunity for everyone to get involved. So, let's say, drop us a line and let us know how you got on with the challenge. We'd love to hear about that. Right, well, as I say, we've got to do some thank yous. So the important thank you here is to William Woodward, who is our donor this episode. William's call sign is Whiskey 7 Delta Oscar Charlie. Many thanks for your donation, William. It's a monthly recurring donation, which is so important for helping us pay our bills and, as I say, keep buying services, etc., to help improve the show. So really grateful for that. Hopefully you might have found value similar to what William did in this episode, and say in our other monthly and subscription donors and subscription donors, and you can do your bit to help support the show by visiting www.ICQPodcast.com/donate, where say whatever value you find in the show, pop it along our way, and say it greatly helps us out and pays our running costs for this show. As always, we'd like to thank the guys who joined you on the News Roundtable. So that's Chris, Mike 0, Tango Charlie Hotel, Martin, Mike 0, Sierra Golf Lima, Ed, DD5, Lima Papa, Frank, Kilo 4, Foxtrot Mike Hotel, and Bill, Whiskey Charlie 3, Bravo. I'm getting used to that new call sign, Bill. So thanks a lot, guys, for taking part there in the show. Well, this weekend should have been UK Hamfest, and as we've been mentioning, we did some interviews in last year's show, so you can visit youtube.com/ICQPodcast to see the interviews from last year's show, and as I say, this might hopefully just keep the appetite whetted nicely as we see what winter brings in store for us in terms of meeting up and socialising in our hobby. So I say feel free to check that out from there. Right, well, I think that just about covers off all our bits and pieces there, Dad. I don't think there's anything we've missed out there. So I think the most important thing now to do is let you head off and spend some time with Mrs. B, and maybe plan some exciting things to do over the next fortnight before our next show.
Yeah, certainly will, Colin. Mrs. B and me are going to have another cup of tea and enjoy the rest of the day. So, yeah, it'll be great, and we'll look forward to chatting with everybody again fairly soon.
No problem at all, guys. Well, listen, continue to enjoy the show. Let everybody know say about the show and you enjoy it. And more importantly, we'll catch you all again in a fortnight's time. 73.
Yeah, 73.